This presentation does not have a particular order because I want you to watch it from start to finish. I want you to get the whole gist of my talk. There are no rules or systems to getting over PMO. Everyone's brain is different like their fingerprints. You just need the information and you sort out your pathway yourself with the knowledge you have. Just the fact that you're exposed to this sort of thinking will help you get out of the mess you're in. I do apologize if I repeat things here and there, but it's the nature of the topic because I want to drive some things home into your mind. I urge you to take some notes because this will have some information which will be difficult to retain, especially the triggers section. And I am new to content creation and have had minimal sleep in the past 2 weeks, so please bear with me. I do have knowledge of some particular things, just like you do, and I want to share with the world to improve people's lives. So bear with me. You are going to get bored listening in the health section, but it will give you the building blocks to get over PMO and hopefully take your health to optimum levels beyond which you have ever imagined, while keeping it simple. I want to say 2 things before we start. My aim with this presentation is to get you over your fears, become a masculine man, eventually get married, and become a successful human being who brings good to this world, and wards off evil out of the world, to stop you from living a quiet life of desperation and go out and enjoy the world with no fear. You don't need someone who you hold in a position of authority to tell you this. You don't need a psychologist. You don't need some significant motivator to tell you this. You need ordinary people out on the street to give you this presentation. The brain learns predictive behavior. Amazing how this predictive behavior can create talent or be used for the most disgusting behaviors. And a 10-minute video isn't going to get you over your PMO addiction. The reason you're in this case of porn is you don't truly take time out to think about life. Nature has chosen you amongst the other people in life to have such a sexual power. And the truth is, great sexual power is correlated with a powerful body. They go hand in hand. It's just you don't see this because that person is wasting away their nutrients, their life, their time. People who become addicts can become one of the smartest in the world, because their pathway to desire is powerful. But the same mechanisms that can help them attain incredible achievements is what the pathway of porn uses to ruin them. And don't think the corporations haven't done studies on this. We are not here for motivation. We're here to discuss your problem in as much detail as possible to convince your biased mind to come back to logic. You need to be professional about this. So greetings and welcome to this presentation on porn and fapping, like none you've ever seen before. I'm going to dive right in, no time wasted, as most of you watching this waste no time getting to masturbating. So I'm going to do the same with this video, and I know a lot of you out there have been anticipating a video like this. If you are looking at this presentation as a scientific research, this is not going to do that, because that would take a tremendous amount of time to go through every single piece of detail and prove it to you. Rather, we'll go by experiences and medical advice. What we'll do rather is you can think of this as going through every single possible thing a person needs to be convinced that masturbation is wrong, and to what most people go through during their life as a masturbator, and how we should align our minds to getting over this behavior. We are going to get straight to the point, no fluff, just straight at your ears like what your parents, doctors, teachers should have said to you. Taking research from people's experiences, and not just medical research itself. And during the video, I will give you my secret food to help heal quicker. But we need to get to convincing you to quit first, of course. And I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for this information, either by small-minded individuals or big corporations. But I don't care. I want you to become the best version of yourself. Because you cannot convince everybody. Only the ones who are disciplined enough to want to change. And you're probably looking at the length of this video and weighing in on whether you should watch it. So let me tell you what we're going to go through. We'll go over the health effects of over-ejaculation and how much is too much. This will go over all the common side effects and in greater depth than you see on forums, which is another reason as to why you should watch. We will go through 99% of things you will want to search up on the internet about this issue. And so you will save a lot of time with this. And you will save tremendous amount of pain and suffering which could be caused by you over-masturbating, living a poor lifestyle. And the sooner you find out the dangers of this, the better off you are that in the next few months or years or even decades that these problems arise, and you would have spent a lot of time dealing with fixing the side effects and realizing why did you get yourself into such a pit. And that comes with a whole garbage and regret and getting over regret, and so one problem leads to another. Bearing in mind that over-masturbation has an effect on the total body, not just a compartmental issue, like they pick out the brain in scientific experiments and only tend to focus on that compartment of the body. Secondly, there is not much research going into detail about masturbation out there, just because of the nature of the problem that it's practiced in isolation. And the biggest benefit as to why you should watch this is I'll go over how to recover from side effects in terms of health, and imagine I'll answer things you would have never even thought of to question, because these problems never have arisen for you yet. Maybe you're only 25% into your masturbation career. Maybe you're on 50%, maybe you're on 75%. So not everybody would see these problems arise early on. Everybody's body is different to some degree. For example, we have the 4 body types. Everyone reacts to different foods differently. Just research that. Some problems in life we take a long time to learn because we have to go through the suffering of the problem, then realize, hey, I have a problem here for which I don't know what's going on. A simple example being like vision becoming blurry, which has an underlying symptom associated with it. And you only realize it when it's too late, because the body has a way of masking these side effects of things until it's very depleted in nutrients. So by watching this presentation, you will have the answers ready in case things like this come up, or even stop them before they come up in life. So you get to enjoy life quicker. I'll discuss the subconscious arousal triggers leading you back to pornography, the common ways people relapse, and the meaning you associate to that. How masculinity is the way out. You heard that. Please keep in mind that this video is geared more towards men because men are the ones who can suffer the most from this condition, only because they lose more fluids during ejaculation and they are the breadwinners in the family most of the time. So if they're no good, the family structure can break much easier. And I'm speaking in generalities here, by the way. So without further ado, I just forgot to say. Alright, firstly, health. So why have I put in this section? Because your health, if not in shape, it can make or break your recovery from PMO. PMO meaning porn, masturbation, orgasm. Short-term abbreviation which we will use just because it's a mouthful to say all that. Certain mineral deficiencies can cause you to not think properly. And if you can't think well or don't know why you are getting urges, it's most likely be due to something going on in your body. In fact, some people with SIBO, short for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and leaky gut and candida can get leakage of sperm when they are urinating, and they think it's sperm wanting to float out because of their PMO issues. When they say when you've stayed away from pornography for how many days, you get that intense urge and it's leaking out. It actually is not always because of that. Whereas it was just a candida infection in the first place. And that sperm, as it's trying to travel out, makes them feel a tingling sensation in their penile area. And they think they somehow need to ejaculate it off, because the body is not reusing it. Whereas actually that is not the case. So things like this do occur. There is a lot of misinformation mixed in with good factual information out there on porn and masturbation. For example, you hear doctors saying this is a good habit if done in moderation. But what is moderation, and for whom? If you have been masturbating for the past 2 years, then moderation is going to be a different amount than if you're 10 years into it, and taking into consideration any other health problems you have and your age, the amount of exercise you do, and the foods you're eating to replenish the body. Because, and this is a reason why I said it, this video is a bit more tailored to men, that men lose a lot of zinc compared to women when they ejaculate. We men do not store zinc, so we need it from our diet. Zinc is used in many pathways for building muscle, brain tissue, etc. And then what if you're on some caffeine and tannin consumption? Well, that's going to lower your absorption rate of zinc, iron, and B12. These are the bare minerals required to regenerate sperm, to make hormones, which is the most important, and brain healing from excess cortisol. Remember, a couple of days after ejaculation, the body is making testosterone again because testosterone raises. Testosterone is a hormone. Hormones require certain minerals in order to be made. If there's a lack of minerals, there's excess of cortisol. Because each time you masturbate and ejaculate, you are releasing hormones into the system and in a cocktail. So we need to have the bioavailable resources for your body to regenerate these, as well as regeneration of dopamine cells, as well as vitamin B1 required to take on stress and for the absorption of fat. And we know fat is used to make hormones, for the creation of insulin and so on. I'm going to go into each of these, but I wanted to give you a hint about the misinformation out there. Doctors say cut down your fat, increase this fat, that fat, saturated fat is bad, but saturated fat is actually needed to make hormones and to make dopamine. Moving on. So, moderation. Who the hell masturbates moderately? I think whoever masturbates moderately just has sex with partners or mixes it in with sex. They probably are successful enough in other areas of life that they can get women because they're not busy masturbating. And what about the balance of minerals you have if you become depleted in zinc, for example? You could be getting symptoms of zinc deficiency and not necessarily excess dopamine release. So how can we gauge this? It's why I believe it's a blatant statement that's cut short. You cannot take this act and just give a one or two statements to people out there without enough information for them to make a decision for themselves. In fact, you making a decision for their patient. And how do we stick to this moderation? What if we go overboard one time with 5 ejaculations a week and we don't reset or allow rest, and we go back again to our standard of 2 ejaculations a week? Then how do we recover from the 5 ejaculations we've already done? And if we did 5 ejaculations that week, then we're slowly creeping into a dirty habit. Because why did we do 5 ejaculations that week? Something must have triggered us. We perhaps looked at a new sort of sexual video with a certain move, or moved into a porn video, or some new porn star popped up in the feed. Or perhaps it was just a seasonal change. When cooler or warmer weathers come, we do notice a change in sexual activity. Ever noticed why you are sometimes more aroused in winter? Ever noticed the testes bulge down when in summer? Because in summer they cannot handle too much heat to produce sperm. So these little observations you perhaps haven't been aware of is what helps you get over the snowflake disease. Okay, so if you're taking foods, drinks or supplements that have tannins in them, then you are blocking absorption of minerals like calcium, iron, and zinc. We know zinc is needed for sperm production, and it's also required by the immune system to fight off infections. We know vitamin B1 is required to fight off stress, and ejaculation is a stressful event to the body in terms that there's a lot of loss of new minerals required to give such pleasure. And that's why people who have been masturbating for many years, most of the time, are actually depleted in minerals and vitamins, and they can't have such vivid orgasms like they used to when they were younger. It's not always due to habituation of nerves, or that we have conscious filters about the world. And so the first thing we need to recover is to remove foods that highly inhibit absorption of certain minerals. And as we've discussed, those are tannin-containing foods and drinks. Tannins also inhibit absorption of vitamin B1, and vitamin B1 is one of, if not the most important vitamins out there. It is needed to produce hormones such as insulin, so the pancreas is not overwhelmed. From a low functioning pancreas comes low stomach acid, and we'll get into all of that and the side effects. Bear with me. I promise I'll get to the powerful stuff soon. I just want to get the building blocks of the presentation out of the way first so we can understand the deeper issues. Vitamin B1 is depleted due to caffeine and sugar. A lack of vitamin B1 will cause you to have that nervous energy if you've ever had that. You know, that stressed energy where you know you have energy yet it's so tensed and stressed. I also have noticed a lot of people out there actually have this nervous energy and they need relief. So they go off and masturbate to relax, whereas they actually had some vitamin B1 deficiency. Then after they masturbate, they go off and have lots of sugary food to rev themselves up out of the artificial sleepiness they have. I wonder if you can relate to this. Vitamin B1 is also depleted by grains, antibiotics, and alcohol, as well as certain types of water. Some signs of vitamin B1 deficiency is restlessness, and anxiety, and seeing nightmares. Of course, I know most of you out there are young, so you are probably not seeing a lot of the symptoms of more severe cases, and I do not want to overwhelm you with content, so you can search up the signs of vitamin B1 deficiency in your own time. But, of course, I am for the most natural route possible, so taking a natural form of vitamin B1 is best, such as a non-fortified nutritional yeast. If you cannot afford nutritional yeast, because I know it can get quite expensive based on how much recommended daily intake it contains, then going for a B complex, which is as close to natural, is the best option. Because you're not going to be on this for the rest of your life. Hopefully by then you'll get out of the energy fapping depleted you from and move on to getting a job and a wife and a successful career. And do note, it does sag the face when you over-masturbate, especially if you have SIBO, as nutrients are extremely depleted now. Potassium. Potassium is a crucial one, because a lot of people are depleted of this. There are foods that we call empty calories like biscuits and pastas. They contain foods like monosodium glutamate, inverted syrup, sugars, etc. These sorts of ingredients inside beverages, foods, and drugs deplete the body of nutrients. And we need to put those nutrients back into the body. But they do more damage than just rob the body of the nutrients. They cause illnesses like diabetes via insulin resistance, dysbiosis of the gut, candida infections, eventually leading to leaky gut, advanced glycated proteins, memory loss, and the list goes on. And if you don't know what insulin resistance is, you better start learning about it, because fapping can quickly lead to that also. So like empty calorie foods rob your body of nutrients because it takes nutrients to digest these foods, and these foods do not give anything back to the body. It's just rubbish food sold to you by big corporations, just like how porn is sold to you for free mostly until you're hooked. And these foods are cheap. But the question begs, why do we need potassium? Well, it's needed for storage and release of sugar into the muscles and liver. Without potassium, you cannot store sugar efficiently, nor can you use it. And we know ejaculation is a stressful event, so cortisol and adrenaline and other hormones are involved. Anytime cortisol is involved, we need to think about sugar. Sugar is involved, whether it's from what you ate or sugar stored in the muscles. The second thing is, potassium is needed for the stomach to produce acid. With a lack of stomach acid, food is not broken down well. And because this hydrochloric acid which is made by the stomach is not being produced by the pancreas to break down food properly, just the fact there's not enough HCl will allow microbes to come into the small intestine and feed on the food, taking nutrients from it before your body has a chance to. You see, we have microbes in the large colon which feed off the fiber from the foods we eat. First, what happens is food is broken down by the stomach using stomach acid, we call hydrochloric acid, and then in the small intestine, that is where the nutrients are absorbed by the intestines into the body, and what is left over is fed on by the microbes in the large intestine. One of the roles of stomach acid is to help prevent microbes coming into the small intestine and feeding off the food, so you can absorb as much as possible from there. A low-functioning stomach correlates to higher chances of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where the microbes from the larger part of the colon come into the small intestine and feed off the foods you eat. So when we have this low stomach acid, and this is not just due to low potassium levels, because what causes low potassium levels? Well, the empty calories you're eating rob the body of the potassium also in order to store the sugar from the junk food you ate. And then masturbating and ejaculation do the same when it spikes cortisol. So now you're pushing your body over the edge. You get into a cycle where you're depleting two ways. I mean, excess ejaculation itself can cause this, and so excess junk food does the same. Or excess ejaculation can leave you feeling tired, so you go for some junk food to raise the blood sugar because you just used up a lot of sugar, and you have this artificial sleepiness. And potassium is used for the cortisol spike because hormones like cortisol require sugar in order to spike, and now you need a boost. And you go and run to the supermarket and grab some cola or caffeinated beverage to raise your blood sugar because you feel like shit, you are artificially sleepy. And when you feel shit because you don't know you have low blood sugar, and you go and run to the supermarket and grab some cola or caffeinated beverage to raise your blood sugar because you feel like crap. And you feel like crap because it's an artificial sleepiness. You're not truly tired. You already slept probably from the third time you masturbated today, and now it's your fifth time. Are you like a cat which just eats and sleeps? And so when you feel like crap because you don't know you have low blood sugar as the cortisol robbed you of sugar, you're like, oh my gosh, I relapsed again. And that's even if you're aware to feel bad for the session you just had anyway. So do this long enough and you're going to rob your body of nutrients. And keep pushing it over the edge so many times with overstimulation of cortisol and adrenal hormones that eventually the cells will either become cortisol resistant or insulin resistant, meaning the cells in your body will stop allowing the cortisol receptors or the insulin receptors to bind to these hormones and do their associated workings. So what happens? Over time, since the cell is not receiving these signals, these hormones are made in excess. And what does that do? Well, if cortisol is being released in excess, you're going to age quicker. You're going to have muscle loss. You won't have as much muscle on your body because cortisol robs protein on the muscles in order to produce sugar. It causes destruction of the brain, so you stop thinking as sharply as you used to. On the other hand, if you raise insulin over time, it will cause destruction of the nerves over time. It tires the pancreas. And now the pancreas is tired from this overstimulation, this constant overstimulation. I know the pancreas does its job every day, but when it's constantly overburdened, it will stop functioning well and cannot make adequate amounts of stomach acid. Low stomach acid, then you cannot digest your food properly. And now you lack nutrients as you're getting bacteria coming into the small intestine to feed off the food. Okay, now you have lack of nutrients, so you cannot raise your blood sugar, and so you crave sweet foods. And the sweet foods now cause even more problems as you lack nutrients to digest. The microbes in the gut feed off the sugar, and you start getting into irritable bowel syndrome, IBS for short, where your intestines just fill up with candida and yeast, and you go into this vicious cycle, and you're so nervous with this low vitamin B1 and low potassium, because potassium is a tranquilizer, it calms the body, and with this nervous energy, you now go to masturbate to feel better momentarily, and you don't know what the hell is going on with your body, or you're so foggy you cannot think well enough to realize this. And now you're in this vicious, destructive cycle. And all because the doctor said in moderation is good, until you screwed yourself over. I just wish they taught this in schools. Now, of course, there are more uses of potassium, but for our case of PMO, this is what's relevant that we will talk about. Nonetheless, potassium is the most important electrolyte out there for us humans. I am not going to go deeper than this. You just have to learn about health if you're going through a PMO. And we do need an understanding of health in this day and age, just like we need water to survive. Because we're throwing all this crap at us in this day and age, from pollutants to destruction of nature to mineral deficiency caused by foods and stimulants like porn and cigarettes. Oh my God. You need at least 4,700 milligrams of potassium per day, either from vegetables or capsules. But vegetables are preferable, but only if this does not make you feel like crap. Because if you do, it's perhaps the fiber is being chewed up by the microbes in your gut, and you may likely have developed small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or some other gut issue, or have a lazy stomach, which is allowing the microbes to feed off the fiber and nutrients from the vegetables you're eating. And I'll talk more about this when I get to the gut section. Magnesium. It helps the muscles relax, and that's all I'll say about it. I have not needed to use it in my career as a main component, just as a complex with other electrolytes. But I will say it is an important mineral. And if you're sweating a lot, especially if you're in warmer climates, you need this in your electrolytes. Salt. Everyone needs to be taking at least a teaspoon of salt every day. If you're sick, take 1 tablespoon a day of sea salt is needed for bodily functions. If you're sick, you need to be taking at least a tablespoon a day of sea salt for bodily functions. For the potassium-sodium pump in our bodies, which transfer atoms into and out of the cells. That's basically it for sodium, or salt as we like to call it. The reason I'm going over these minerals is because a lack of them are triggers to deteriorating health over time. When you have these in your body, then you run a low risk of becoming sick and can think clearer in order to get over porn, masturbation and orgasm. Because in my experience, a lot of people out there just feel aroused or stressed just because they lack these nutrients, just slowly because of that. And they think that they're addicted. They are not actually addicted. They just have found a way to relax off the side effects of bodily deficiencies, much like how people take massages. And so a lot of people just can't think clear enough to stop themselves from relaxing off PMO. As in, they use PMO as a way to relax their bodies, whereas this is actually not the main cause of it. It's just a tool people are using in order to relax off. Vitamin B12. This is needed to make cells lost from PMO. Simply, that's how you should think of it in your case. The natural form you want to be taking is methylcobalamin. Don't take cyanocobalamin. Cyanide contained in cyanocobalamin is carcinogenic to take. If you are deficient in vitamin B12, you can have irreversible damage to your nervous system. But I don't think this is too much of a problem as much as insulin resistance caused by the body due to prolonged PMO. And this information I'm presenting at the moment will build up to that. Because what can cause a deficiency in B12? Low stomach acid and a bad gut. Again, pointing back to the cycle I was talking about earlier. I also forgot to mention earlier that a low-functioning stomach can also be caused by a H. pylori infection, but that typically is due to low stomach acid in the first place, in my experience. So the bug gets in and lowers the stomach acid also, which can wreak havoc on the body. Again, these all stem from stressful events to the body in the form of malnutrition, wastage away of vital minerals, which leads us to this point. Poor eating, poor lifestyle like PMO, drug use, hint hint, porn, that leads us to these vicious cycles. So B12 and some other minerals have to always be looked at as the side effects of poor lifestyle, something that causes the poor lifestyle which leads to malabsorption in the body, and therefore we end up with these deficiencies initially. But then the deficiencies are what cause us to stay in that position of health and not heal quick enough to prevent other triggers that lead to the urge of relaxing off to PMO. Like as discussed earlier, the feeling of wanting to relax. And you have to keep in mind there are dozens of stimulants out there in the environment, like plastics. But if we get the main components well and in place, those things can be ignored and treated later. They are not so important for our case here. I mean, if most of you have experienced being at the beach versus in the city around traffic, you know how much more relaxing it is at the beach or in the woods, even if you were to eat junk food. So this is how the impact of stress hormones like cortisol have on the body, and how the calming effects and toxins in the environment can have such effects. So what we want to do is build a strong enough body to take on as much of these stresses as possible, because not everyone can afford to live near the beach, and not everyone can live there forever. Our lives are not designed that way. Stress is going to hit you in some form throughout your life, and you need to be ready for it. And that's one reason why we're quitting PMO. Vitamin D. One of, if not the most important vitamins, especially crucial to lowering stress. If you take this after an orgasm and ejaculation, you'll notice it will relax your tense body from the excess cortisol. Because anytime vitamin D goes up, cortisol comes down. And anytime cortisol goes up, vitamin D comes down. So there's a relationship. When cortisol is high, that's the best time to take vitamin D. And that is why you feel great when you go outside when you're stressed. So there is a relationship. And we can lower cortisol just by taking this vitamin D. Vitamin D in the form of D3, of course, which is in supplement form. As little as 2000 IU units is enough. But if you're deficient in vitamin D3, you can feel stressed, and that can again be a trigger for you to relapse into relaxing off with a session of porn and orgasm. And a low vitamin D allows cortisol to raise. And since cortisol is high, we now have blood sugars involved, and therefore insulin as well. And we are now using up hormones and minerals, so we need to replenish the body. And vitamin D is so important that if you have just that in high amounts in your body, most of the other deficiencies and side effects can be lessened by a lot. It can help you sleep better, it helps you relax and calm down, much better than magnesium. Vitamin D is the only vitamin that's like a hormone in the medical field. And the natural source from the sun is the best. But because most people haven't been taught why it's crucial, they sit inside and they masturbate. So there's no sunlight. They deplete their hormones, and vitamin D goes along with those. Because vitamin D is required to make hormones also. Which is why we say it acts like a hormone. If you're noticing you're getting sick quite often, look at your vitamin D levels. If they're too low, you really cannot sleep well or de-stress. And this may mean you need supplementing with it. Don't be afraid that it's not natural or whatever. Vitamin D from the sun takes a long time to increase your levels, but also takes more time to be used up by the body. So a mixture of both is best if you're already low on vitamin D. I recommend 10,000 IU units per day. If you notice you're urinating frequently because of it and cannot sleep, lessen it. Of course, don't go overboard as it can create damage to the body. It's a fat-soluble hormone, and fat-soluble hormones do not go away with water like the B vitamins. They are absorbed into fat and cannot just be urinated out. They have to be used up. But vitamin D can greatly help you recover and actually stay away from PMO by lessening your stress levels. Because a lack of sleep can be a trigger for stress and depletion of minerals, as cortisol is again rising, and therefore stress. And now you're back on the porn sites. So, just so I don't forget, cod liver oil is great. It contains vitamin D, which is a very good source over supplementation. And it has the added bonus of omega-3 fatty acids required to make hormones and recover the brain. Again, if you think supplementation is not natural and you're this natural person, well, if you're masturbating 5 times a day, that's actually not natural. So get over it. Why avoiding all stress is wrong. You cannot avoid all stresses of life. Life will just throw it at you. Life is difficult as a man. Get over it, go out more into nature, and you'll feel better. It's that simple. Ultimately, porn should look disgusting to you, so it stops having an effect on you. Because it's a dirty act. You gotta get over it, that's it. There's nothing needed to convince you. You know it deep down. The best way is to do something extreme, an extreme task, and do many of these, and you'll have some way of moving forward from this addiction. What do I mean by extreme? I don't mean going for a fapathon. What I mean is go out bungee jumping. Go out explore the world. Go swim in a river, making sure it's safe. Go paragliding. Those sort of extreme tasks, they push your brain beyond the barriers that it thinks it has. And if you're tired after a fap, you are weak. It has had an impact on you. You should be able to go for multiple rounds with the short breaks. And if you cannot, no pill is going to save you. Your body is extremely tired, and it needs to replenish. A great sign of this is you cannot handle stress like you used to. This is a sign of a stressed body depleted of nutrition, and so we're looking at pre-diabetes here. I don't mean diabetes, I mean pre-diabetes. Here's a test. Have you ever tried watching porn with the sound off? Now tune into your senses. Imagine watching a porn video with the sound off. Think about that. Can you handle not getting triggered as much as if there was sound? So sound plays a big role in arousing you, because the more variables shooting at you, as in images, then on top of that is sound, and then there are certain character moves, and the level of attractiveness of the characters all playing in the role. Play with each one, and you'll start to notice how it plays with arousal. There's much more trigger when there's a sound available, isn't there? That's something to think about. You have to realize that 90% of the arousal is done by you. You go into some hallucination, and then you move yourself towards porn and use that as a means of getting out of the hallucination. That means you ejaculate out of your hallucinations. Picture a very unattractive character in the porn video. How much more attracted are you to the video now? Something to think about. Okay, omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are needed to build back the brain. The brain is primarily made of fat, and so we need this omega-3 fatty acids to heal the brain and save ourselves from dementia too. There has been a link between high cortisol and dementia. And we know cortisol causes destruction of the brain cells. So I believe there is a link here that omega-3 fatty acids can help heal the brain. High cortisol also can lead to destruction of the eyes. So omega-3 fatty acids are great to heal the eyes too. Ever noticed you start getting blurry vision from so much PMO? There's a correlation going on there. And ever noticed memory loss occurring from PMO? Although it might not be a primary cause of these symptoms, but it can be a secondary cause, because as we said, we are either mineral deficient because we're practicing this habit, or we have made ourselves mineral deficient because we've made our digestive system sluggish. So it's a cycle, and you need to know where you are in the cycle. Omega-3 fatty acids also play a role in producing hormones. So taking cod liver oil is a fantastic food, as well as beef meat, which contains lots of it. I'm not a big believer in eating beef long term just because it's quite a heavy food, which I'll talk about in other videos, but for short-term recovery, I don't mind it if you have a budget, and I'll get into the alternatives to this soon. Some other symptoms of omega-3 fatty acid deficiency is dry eyes, scaly skin, ADHD, depression, allergies, as well as loss of memory. The important thing in all this is that there is some overlap between symptoms of different conditions, and that's just because the body works that way. Almost every cell in your body requires different minerals to work with. So you cannot single out a single deficiency based on a mineral, or a particular mineral, in better words. Omega-3 fatty acids cannot be made by the body, just as vitamin C cannot, so they need to be in the diet. And a question to ask yourself is, how much of our bodies is made of fat? Either in the form of cholesterol, saturated fat, our skin, our brain cells, perhaps dopamine. It's something to think about. You see, you haven't been thinking all this time. That's why you're in this situation of PMO. Moving on. Vitamin C. Vitamin C is needed in younger years of child's life, but it doesn't need to be so strictly adhered to later on in the years, because there are generally bigger health problems that by replenishing vitamin C doesn't fix up those primary problems. Vitamin C becomes a secondary issue, and if we fix the primary problems, then the secondary problems like deficiency in vitamins will ultimately heal by itself. For example, if your gut isn't well and you cannot absorb minerals, then you're going to be deficient in all vitamins to some degree. So fixing the gut is the primary motive for us. But just a warning about vitamin C. The eyes and the adrenals store a lot of vitamin C, and those are two very important organs. The adrenals sit on top of the kidneys and manufacture most of the hormones you require. In fact, Dr. James Wilson wrote an entire book on adrenal stress and got famous for it a couple of years ago. Now you're going to hear a lot that you require vitamin C because we need it to produce hormones and lower stress. But I found in my research that humongous amounts of vitamin C do lower the amounts of mitochondria you have in your body. And the mitochondria is the most important part of the cell for recovery and exercise, in particular for us. So you don't need humongous amounts of vitamin C. You're going to start hiding some of the other symptoms. Oranges are enough. You're not going to get sick if you don't take it. The B complexes are more important, I believe. They do a lot of the work for the body, and I know there are loads of products out there that say you need vitamin C because the adrenals create hormones and therefore it's required to make hormones. But really, just like you don't need tons of fat in your diet to create cholesterol and then to produce hormones, you also don't need vitamin C in big amounts. It will just cause more damage than get better. And keep in mind that the same people who sell the adrenal problem do also sell herbs, which leads me to talking about to share my opinion. Herbs. There are a lot of people out there selling herbs in order to recover PMO. And they really do not know a whole lot about herbs. They target young individuals and show how the adrenals require these herbs. And I'm talking about the adaptogenic herbs out there, not the ones you spread over your food. Some of them like ashwagandha or Siberian ginseng. Now, these herbs need special care when taken. They need to be taken in the right cycles and with someone who is very, very experienced. And really, in my experience, I have yet to find someone who is truly experienced in this. If you take these with the right minerals from some professional who has experience in the work field, then it's okay. But really, in my research and experience, you do not need these at all. Your body can do well without them. There is no magical herb that is floating out there in someone's backyard in mainland China that is going to cure your so-called addiction or premature ejaculation or whatever. We will get into what will cure those things, but my recommendation is to stay away from these as much as possible, unless you truly see it's working. Because these herbs are more potent than pills for one, and they come with tannins a lot of the time. So you need to know when to take them, their effects on your adrenals and cortisol, so you are not drained with energy, and whether your body can accept them. Because you were born somewhere, and taking natural herbs from that area, in my opinion, is better than taking it from China, where your body hasn't adapted to that soil. As in, you don't carry genetics from that area. This is just my opinion. I could be wrong, But I know 100% for sure that you do not need them to heal anything. You can do that with other ways I'm going to share. And we do not live in old times in villages where we have rich soil and not as much fake food. So we had less factors to deal with back then. And the doctors of that time could solve health problems of that time. But with this modern age, we have more health problems. We have more variables like prediabetes, like the environment. There's not enough information about these adaptogenic herbs, and there's just too many factors to work with. You could take ashwagandha at high doses and it's bad for you. But how do you know for your body how much is a high dose? Because ashwagandha numbs you out after a certain dose. So is that dosage the same for someone else? So how can you trust the dosage you're getting from the supplier? So less is always best when it comes to herbs, and avoiding taking many of them at the same time is best in my opinion. Some side effects of ashwagandha are like lowering cortisol. And so what if now you feel tired all the time? Because cortisol is a hormone which wakes you up in the morning. Do you want to feel numb for the day and cannot focus? And it also boosts testosterone. So yes, there are advantages. But do you want to feel tired and aroused at the same time during the day, trying to get over your PMO? And when you stop these herbs, would you relapse? Because you recovered in a state of fogginess under these herbs anyway, right? And then we also got to think, what if you have other health problems you haven't found out that are actually causing the thing you're using this herb to heal? What if the herb does not heal the underlying condition and only fixes those symptoms? So how do you know what you're trying to heal? In my opinion, it's an area that needs more research, and we don't want to waste our time trying to figure out what herb works when really there's an easier way to heal. Some people also take this to lower testosterone because it lowers their urges, but that's artificial. You'll relapse if that herb isn't around, guaranteed. If someone is telling you it works or whatever, trust me, there's much more to it. They probably are either fake or taking something else with it. Or they are just healthy individuals. I'm talking more about the unhealthy individuals practicing PMO. I mean, ever notice when you go after these sorts of herbal supplements that they come with other minerals and vitamins? Or they come as a tonic? Well, how would you know what's doing the work? So it's a gray area. I have a better pathway for you. Keep listening. Again, there's lots of opinions on vitamin C and herbs. For our purposes, we generally do not need them. The best recovery is done by the body itself as long as we give it the basic nutrients it needs in the form of minerals and raw materials from food. Other minerals are not as important as these that I've discussed for our purposes of PMO recovery. However, the B vitamins are the most important set of vitamins for the body to recover from not just PMO, but for any other illness. Therefore, it's great to take a B complex. Natural forms are always my go-to. So yes, you'll get many vitamins and minerals from foods that are rich in them, like from red meat and salmon, provided you are staying away from caffeine and tannins at least 3 to 4 hours before you have a meal, so you can absorb everything possible from the money you spent on the food you're eating. But again, we need that good stomach acid in order to break these foods down and have ingestion. So we need to test if we have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If you are feeling like crap from fibrous foods, and you find if you stop eating foods with fiber in them, like vegetables and nuts, then you may have a problem with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And if you have shoulder and upper back pain, you perhaps have a digestive issue like SIBO. So you need to be taking care of this illness and then the PMO. If I was to point one out, I would say go and fix your health first, then the mind can think well and you can take control of yourself easier. When you're sick, everything just falls apart and you're back at PMO again because you can't think of how to stop yourself when you get bodily urges that come not from your brain, but more so that your body is stressed as it has some deficiency. So keep that in mind. But treating both is the ideal in my practice. And don't worry about relapses here and there from time to time. As long as you're building great health which will lead you to becoming more confident and masculine, you'll get out of that cycle eventually, realizing how stupid of a habit it was. So let's move on to the best diet for recovery. The best diet is based on intermittent fasting. This way of eating is going to heal you greater and quicker. We also have to respect there are older people watching this, so they have more damage and slower metabolisms than the younger people. Now we're getting on to the idea of why people say fapping will stunt your growth, and that is such a funny statement. You see, what I'm trying to get at with all this information is the idea of prediabetes. Prediabetes is something that occurs before type 2 diabetes. You create all this insulin hormone released to compensate the stress caused by the loss of nutrition in the body over many years. Whether that be excessive junk food and or excess ejaculation. And along with that, there's a greater life out there beyond you and just a computer screen. There's a real world where you're not stuck in your mind or fantasies, where you become a man and fear doesn't stop you from testing the world itself. Does masturbating stunt growth? It doesn't stunt it, but it doesn't let you reach the peak you could reach if you are malnutritioned. Think about that. Because if you're masturbating excessively, now what's going to happen is you're becoming depleted in nutrients. It takes far more energy to stimulate yourself than having sex with a woman where you touch her body and you go slow with the turning her on and in turn you becoming turned on, or she turns you on. There's a balance between relaxation energy and stimulating energy. Although these are not scientific terms, what I mean by these terms is a whole lot of neural pathways being activated by flight or fight, the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. Most of you out there won't know the details of how it works, so I'm aiming to give it to you in a language you can get a picture of. There is a big difference between you when you are behind a computer screen. I want you to picture a camera to the side of you, recording. Now look at yourself turning yourself on and watching porn through the lens of the camera. Pause for a second. Really think about that with the associated sounds in the room. But cut out the sound coming from the computer. Now do you see how you're just doing something to yourself that brings back no calming energy back to you? You're not holding on to the hips of the girl or touching your belly to her belly. There's no calming energy there. It's just you trying to fuel this rocket to fly off. And there's no relationship between you and the video. I mean, are you going to go and rub your belly onto this computer screen and hopes you'll get a touch of the other person's skin in the video? So masturbation is requiring more energy to stimulate oneself. It really is not a natural act of reproduction. There's no animal out there who faps, so you are doing worse off than a donkey. Really, I mean it. I'm going to put you down for this stupid act that deteriorates lives. A life of isolating dreams where you provide no benefit to humanity in any form. Do you really think fappers wake up and say, I want to make the world a better place, and actually go on to that goal without giving up? Let them go and feel a bit of stress when they're out there trying to make the world a better place. They'll run back home, jerk off, and lose motivation. There's no animal out there that doesn't have some sort of touch on the body of the other organism when reproducing. So why is human growth hormone important to us? Because human growth hormone is the big anti-aging hormone. We need to make up for the stress we've caused to our bodies. We want you to look vibrant again, and not just what you looked like before you started fapping. We want you 100 times better than that. Because if we just go back to how we were, it's easier to get back into PMO. I want you to have a tremendous amount of energy and put that towards building bone strength and muscle strength. You have energy, whether you work out or not, so we want to move that energy we have towards beneficial things related to improving your life than to some crappy computer screen and some whore who is doing porn for her own satisfaction of making money, and you're too pussy to control yourself behind that fucking computer screen. And I want you to have energy to sleep less and get into your goals, to make up for all that wasted time. You don't need as much sleep and can take on more stress when you're in a fasted state. The body will start burning ketones instead of the sugar as its primary source of fuel. I'm not going to go into the science of this, but let's talk a bit about it. When the body has sugar stored in the form of what we call glycogen, and it's burning the sugar, then we don't have this high amounts of human growth hormone. Ketones, on the other hand, provide more energy per molecule than glucose molecules do, because ketones can get into some parts of the brain which glucose molecules cannot. Then it can provide resources to those compartments in the brain so healing can occur. And not just the brain, the body also. The fact that ketones can provide more energy than glucose molecules mean we will feel more energetic. So, after 18 hours of not eating, the body starts to produce ketones, because at this point you do not have any glucose left to burn. You may feel sluggish until your body starts to adapt to the building of ketones and burning this as its fuel energy source. This adaptation can take anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 months to really get into the flow. But the effects are amazing. This is more difficult for those who have not ever tried fasting. Their bodies are so used to burning glucose that This is more difficult for those who have not ever tried fasting. Their bodies are so used to burning glucose that if they were left in the woods, they would die much faster than someone else who had adapted to fasting. Ketones, on the other hand, are a cleaner, more efficient form of fuel for the body than glucose. We have 2 benefits to going on an intermittent fasting protocol. One, it teaches you resilience, to be able to take on more stress. The second thing is, you don't have that dirty glucose fuel in your body that triggers insulin. When you eat carbohydrates, then that triggers the hormone release of insulin, because insulin is required to store carbohydrates into the muscles and liver in the form of glycogen. So carbohydrates in different forms come in, and they are turned into glycogen, basically. Some say fasting is stressful to the body. It's only stressful in the beginning where the body is building machinery to cope with the fasting and because it's perhaps lacking nutrition, or nutrients in other words. It needs to build up ketones. This sort of stress will go after you've adapted to it over weeks and months. And once you've done it for a long time, you can switch back onto it anytime. So you will get lots of urges in the beginning, but they will be lessened over time if you fast and take into account every psychological tactic and mindset I discuss in this video. Once the body builds up the vitamins and minerals, it will be easier to think and bypass urges. It's not necessarily that carbohydrates are bad in all forms. It's just that I have found when they are in abundance in the body, then you get such hormonal switches that it's like dirty combustion where a car engine shakes and you get mood swings coming with it because insulin is triggered. And too much insulin over time causes damage to the body. It makes hormones play up. It causes insulin resistance where the cell starts to block sugar molecules coming in because the receptor for insulin is denying insulin from coming in to open up the cell so glucose and other nutrients can travel inside. Now obviously that happens over time. But what happens before that is what we call prediabetes. Prediabetes is difficult to pick up on a test. What happens in prediabetes is the body receives so much incoming carbohydrates from the diet. And because it's still young and fresh and alive, then it starts producing the hormone insulin. This insulin keeps being produced each time you eat carbohydrates. And the more this occurs over your life, the more insulin produced. Insulin has a damaging effect on the body. It pushes down growth hormone when it's released, so we don't get that effect of anti-aging. We age quicker than if we were not to take as much carbohydrates. So why does this prediabetes occur? To protect your blood sugar from carrying too much sugar around. It pushes it straight into the cell as a survival mechanism. When this occurs over time, the pancreas, which produces insulin, gets tired over time. This tiredness comes from a lack of nutrition. Because think about it, you're eating all these carbs and the pancreas needs to produce these hormones. These hormones require nutrients because vitamin B1 being the most important of them, as well as zinc, vitamin D, cholesterol, etc. So now you realize why I was mentioning those ingredients in the first place. They are not just for recovery, but to produce insulin also. So when we get this high blood sugar from eating carbohydrates, and then insulin coming in to push the sugar in the blood into the cell as survival, we get a big drop in blood sugar. This big drop causes mood swings. It can cause sleepiness after a meal and drowsiness, and you feel like crap. So what relation does this have to PMO? Well, when you get this artificial tiredness, you feel like eating more sugar, but you're still full and haven't digested all your food. So what happens then is, I've seen a lot, and this is my observation because after studying the brain for more than a decade, I realize it learns behaviors unconsciously in order to survive, which you are not conscious of. Let's say the body drops some blood sugar. You are a PMO agent, let's say. You masturbate a lot. Now you feel drowsy after carbs. You get tired. You may have SIBO and also have some pain in upper right shoulder. You've released so much insulin that your blood sugar went from an all-time high to an all-time low. You now require lots of sugar to continue feeling good. So what do? You go to rev yourself up on some pornography. You flap that penis until you ejaculate off with an orgasm. Then you start to feel better. Why? Because you just released a spike of hormones, cortisol being one of them. That cortisol comes in and drags glucose molecules out of your cells and puts it into the blood to raise your blood sugar. That's the purpose of cortisol. And when we release cortisol, vitamin D comes down. And so does human growth hormone. And you go back and eat again because your blood sugar comes down after how many hours again, and you're back at the same cycle. And most of the time, it's not just that you have a PMO addiction. It may not even be an addiction. It can be your own body that has learned this behavior in order to raise its blood sugar. There's an underlying health issue there that may have arisen from porn and masturbation and junk food sort of lifestyle in the beginning, and later on turn into a habit to get out of the low blood sugar case. Now you're starting to see the big picture. And what's another side effect of too much cortisol? Low long-term growth hormone. So you don't reach your full potential height and growth. Do you see the whole spiral effect of these problems? There's many mechanisms at work, but what we need to focus on is anytime cortisol is up, human growth hormone is down. Long-term low-grade cortisol is what causes destruction of the gut, the central area of nutrition absorption. And so these changes of abrupt changes in blood sugar and blood sugar problems can be triggers for going into PMO. You have this negative state of energy that causes depression, boredom, artificial tiredness, and you just want to feel better. So removing this negative trigger can save 50% of relapses from people out there. One observation I have made is that one of the reasons we become addicted in the first place is human growth hormone is super high at a young age, and so you're growing and you have unbelievable orgasms. Just try to work out, an extremely powerful workout. For example, sprinting. Notice the human growth hormone will go super high, by almost 700%. Then go, and you've probably tried this, an orgasm, and ejaculate. Notice how your orgasms become so powerful. And so what happens, as I believe that later on this addiction pathway remains, but the human growth hormone declines slowly, and we look for more ways of getting that original strong orgasm we used to, either with fetishes or different types of content, more hardcore pornography or whatever. I've discussed this concept first before discussing the foods to use to recover. One, because it can solve a lot of problems out there. And two is, you need to learn what the focus on my health section is about before you understand why I suggest eating the foods I'm going to mention. Now you know we need to go into fasting. We raise human growth hormone, so you reach your full potential of growth. We move resources away from being stored as potential negative energy to being shooted out in ejaculation and more into bone strength and building of the brain and muscle so you can enjoy life to the fullest and keep the body healthy with full of vibrant youthful energy to be geared towards the goals in life. In the beginning of fasting, you may feel very stressed because you're forming this new type of energy called ketones. And you're initially fixing all these hormonal problems, so you're going to feel aroused. You're going to have better ejaculations. But once we get used to this new way of eating, we will eventually get over that. It's just this is a prerequisite to this pathway we're trying. Over time, you'll see that food isn't as important to you. You start to get bored of just eating and producing nothing exceptional in terms of goals as a human being. So you get a better outlook on life. Because one thing you must understand, and that which all successful people in the world have, but particularly our ancestors, is that the stomach is the entry to sexual desires. If you are hungry, after a certain point of hunger, your sexual desire will diminish. And if you can quench your hunger for a long period of time, then that will give you tremendous power in terms of goal setting also. When food stops becoming the main primary important thing, you put other things in place of that desire, like goals or working out, and you become like a beast. And F the world. After the desire to eat comes the desire for sexual experiences. And that's why we want to control our hunger first. By taking on stress and at times fasting periodically, you don't need that much food to survive. Our ancestors could survive days without food, and you don't need carbohydrates which give so much negative energy. You could just live off meat and animal fat. Because over time, when you don't eat as often and fast, you're producing ketones. The average thin person has 100,000 calories of fat that they can turn to ketones to burn. So human beings are not going to die. It's only in the adaptation phase you think you will, because your body is so used to feeding it sugar and sugar in the form of crap you're sold to like soda drinks. Even hamburgers have sugar in them, for God's sake. When your body adapts to producing ketones easy, it can fuel the brain and be fulfilled with little amounts of food, rather than going for binge eating and binge PMO sessions. By eating less frequently, you become satisfied with the balances of life. This is how you learn balance, that you haven't been taught earlier in life. It's just a fact that people who do PMO are not experienced in balance. Balance has to be learned, just like learning to walk and learning to speak. So what's my recommendation for intermittent fasting? 2 meals a day between 6 hours is a great place to start if you don't have any hormonal issues. So 18 hours fasting and 6 hours eating. This is not dry fasting for you religious people, so you can have fluids during your fasting time. But those fluids that contain no calories, so no sugar. That second meal will satisfy you and leave you with energy in the beginning. Over a few months, I eventually would go to 1 meal per day, but that takes good health to get there. And the good thing with 1 meal a day is you have less opportunity to jerk off. You know, if you do, you have to do it before your meal, because you will be left tired and need to put the nutrition back in. So after you have your 1 meal, you cannot eat again, and that will help prevent you from PMO. The second thing is, by the time you're at 1 meal a day, you'll be getting to bigger goals in life, because just the fact of not eating dramatically changes your mindset of the world. There's just something special that occurs when you stop eating so frequently. Could you imagine if you were born poor? How much more motivation you would have had in life? Loads of successful people in the world who were born poor and had bare minimum food to eat really did not go through PMO addictions. They were just goal-oriented. It's difficult to explain why this occurs, and the why is not so important like I mentioned in the beginning of this video. Some things are just good, so we do them. You buy a Ferrari not because you know the mechanisms or the details of how it drives fast and feels nice. You just know it has certain benefits and you buy one. You don't quit smoking because you know deep down all the cellular processes of why it's bad for you, but just that it's causing you to feel bad even though it's addicting, so you quit. In the summary of this presentation or course, I will bring all this information together and give you the aim of my goal with this presentation, and I know you will enjoy it. Exercise. When we exercise, especially when we are in a fasted state, we want to exercise in such a way that the rest in between is neither too much or too less, so we avoid stressing our bodies. We want that sort of traditional farmers type training, where it's low grade strength but over many years, that builds the most strength over time, not heavy weights. Have you ever noticed weight trainers lose their muscle if they stop training for a few days? We want to build farmers-like strength. It doesn't have to be as defined. We want strength like our ancestors, not some physique. But of course, this is up to you. Maybe you want an aesthetic body, and you may need to do that. There's no rules to this. It's what suits you. But the important thing is we want, anytime we feel the urge, go and exercise. This may mean you need to train 2 to 4 times a day, and maybe intense so you can get rid of the excess energy, and instead of burning it off in a session of ejaculation, you turn that into bone and muscle strength to improve your quality of life. Maybe you'll take up boxing also. And then what happens when you work out is, when you're in a fasted state, you won't have as many urges because you won't have excess energy to be used up for the disgusting act. However, why do I recommend not overtraining? Why do I say train like a farmer? Because long-term, low to medium grade strength training is more beneficial. Because when you tear your muscles with so much exercise, it can push cortisol up for the inflammation, especially if you do not know how to recover quickly. Higher inflammation means more cortisol. More cortisol just means changes in blood sugar, and higher cortisol will make you stressed, so you will feel like jerking off again. Then what happens is, if you eat crap one day or two, you start to feel sluggish with all the nutritional deficiencies coming in random, with the PMO, cause loss of nutrients, and that you just cannot work out again. You fall back into the spiral of dirty, incombustible energy that is a trigger for you to get back into PMO. This is very crucial to realize. So you need a plan in place to recover quickly. This can mean eating more meat, more nutrients, more relaxation, more cold showers, maybe massage. Cold showers are fantastic for removing sudden urges. You will figure out what's best for you as you begin. Don't worry so much about a few so-called relapses here and there. Just keep going on with the mindset. Work every day on yourself, so as you move towards something better, a better lifestyle, you'll slowly fade away from the poor lifestyle of the masturbator's paradise. So don't go heavy when lifting weights. Medium weights where you can go 10 to 20 reps is best. You'll find a sweet spot with experience. Again, the whole idea of this is to get to know your body very well. Understand what triggers it. Half this presentation is getting you to realize this. Just completely tiring the body every day, and I don't mean exhaust the body. I recommend working out anytime you are urging. Just go, and go mad like a powerlifter and tire yourself. Turn that energy into powerful bone and muscle strength. Jump into the pool if you need to. Then have a sauna session to relax down. Too much cortisol will get you wanting to urge, because sex calms the stress. In the initial stages of stress, the sexual hormones rise. Oh, and don't be like those motivated people who BS themselves. I'm going to do so and so because I'm changing. You don't need to waste time going to the sauna. Go and make one in your backyard. Just get to the action of moving on from porn into better things in life. Have cold showers if you need to, and having a cold shower in the morning like a cold pool helps you build strength and get out of the urges. You want to count every day of your life, not be sluggish and not count your life as sessions of cocktails of porn, masturbation, and orgasm. You see, you have to realize you have a blessing to have such sexual urges. High sexual urges are a sign of immense strength in the body, but is being wasted on such a poor act. That energy, if unleashed and directed towards the right pathway, can make you one of the most successful humans on the face of the earth. Every successful person I know has high sexual urges, but they either learn how to control them or tailor the energy towards something greater because they hadn't by accident fallen into this act like you have. You know, someone in your youth perhaps showed you some porn video and you thought it was funny in the beginning. Then they made it look like it's okay to masturbate, maybe in the classroom. It's that little dirty secret that people do in isolation. And doctors gave the same advice. They said masturbation in moderation is good. What BS. And as society decayed because big corporations pushed for you to say okay to porn, how hypocritical is it to force Pornhub to confirm that the viewer is of age of 18, now in 2024, but not in the beginning? Sprinting is one of the easiest things you can do to raise growth hormone. All you need to do is sprint 30 seconds and rest for a minute and a half. The rest is so you don't get deep into glucose burning. We don't want cortisol rising. We want to keep cortisol the minimum possible, so our growth hormone is as high as possible. So repeat that in sprints of 8, at least 4 times a week. That's like sprinting once every second day. Doing this boosts growth hormone by about 700%, coupled with the intermittent fasting as explained earlier, which boosts growth hormone by about 2000%. So that's about 2700%. That's a lot. I want to talk about this first because it links up so well to the previous things I've been talking about. Liver organs of either chicken, lamb, or beef contain enormous amounts of nutrition for the body. Yet they are the most underrated and undereaten food. They have high amounts of not just the vitamins and minerals, but the basic building blocks of the brain and pituitary gland, which we'll get into soon. Perhaps the most nutritious food out of the entire organism. Even cod liver is fantastic. If you're a vegan and fapping off, my goodness, are you going to create a weak body and tons of inflammation in your gut? You have every right to stop. Do not resist. Stay away from PMO. You're going to just masturbate yourself to death. Eating liver or organ meats once a week is really good. Some of these organ meats do contain hormones, so you're going to become quite aroused maybe. So eat it at the right time, not before bed. Lunch is probably the best time for our cases. These organ meats give the highest amounts of natural B vitamins for formation of red blood cells and for cognitive function. Mince. This is the superfood from recovering from PMO. Why? Because it contains all the protein and fat you require to make hormones you've lost during your PMO. The fat will be used up to make cholesterol, which in turn is used to make hormones you've lost. Without the fat from animal, which we typically call saturated fats, we cannot make hormones like cortisol and testosterone. And if you're fapping away all day, you need to replace these hormones. The fat will also be used to heal the brain, because we know the brain is primarily fat. The saturated fat is especially good for the healing of the gut. If you've been on PMO for a long time, all that cortisol and lack of nutrients in your body is wreaking havoc on your gut. Your gut is probably inflamed, especially if you suffer from small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or candida or insulin resistance. I think it was Socrates who said that all diseases begins in the gut. So this saturated fat will greatly help heal your gut lining. It also helps produce bile salts needed for digestion of food. Without this and stomach acid, the breakdown of food is greatly inhibited, and you get a higher chance for an inflamed gut as these microbes and yeast start to infiltrate the small intestine. Another reason we want to take animal fat is that it helps produce collagen. You know, most of you have that saggy looking face like you've been in a pornographic cave for a few days. This is the food that helps rebuild that collagen and give you that vibrant skin again that has lovely texture to it. So you stop having that zombie looking face from now on. So the type of mince I would recommend is higher fat. Why? Fat is very essential when your body is depleted.
I mean, a lot of your body is fat. The cell membranes are made of fat. The brain is made of primarily fat. The skin, hair, and nails all require fat. When we are on intermittent fasting, we are going to be making more growth hormone. Growth hormone will speed up repair of the body and build up more muscle. And when we are eating 2 meals a day in a small period, and some of you will go into 1 meal a day if you can handle it. But of course, since some of you out there are young, and by young I mean under the age of 40, then you're going to need much more nutrition than a person who is over the age of 40. So when we have this high amounts of growth hormone in our bodies, we want abundant resources for quicker recovery. If you don't have enough fat that your body demands, then your body is going to feel stressed with the malnutrition, and you have a greater chance of edging over to relaxation with pornography. Again, going back to that negative cycle. Remember, most hormones are made from fat. If you do not have enough fat in your diet, and you may need a lot really than what's recommended, you will start to have a rise in stress, and you will notice it. A note about meat: try and eat meat that hasn't been flavored. For example, there are frozen beef patties sold in the supermarket that contain black pepper and powdered onions and herbs and spices to make the beef patty tasty. But really, if you just go to the butcher and ask for some mince and barbecue or grill the patty yourself, it's so much more beneficial for you than frying the patty or the mince, and you can make a burger out of it. Second thing is, when we are sprinting, we're going to be going super high with growth hormones. We are going to be using up a lot of minerals and fat and protein to produce these hormones and for recovery, and it's going to be our biggest advantage. We're going to see results quick, get you lean and healthy, and the faster we can get you to a more abundant life filled with goals and real women, not cyber ones, the quicker we can get over this PMO. A word about balance. Most of you out there who are struggling with PMO haven't really learned balance in life. I don't blame you. No one teaches you. Some people are just born with it. Some pick it up as an unconscious behavior from their parents or peers, and some have such different bodies, perhaps those bodies can take a lot of stress before crashing, such as the adrenal body type. So they keep pushing the body because it can take it. And especially when you're young, you're full of life. Many cellular processes to protect you work at that time, which shut down as you age. And if you don't get to this habit quick enough, those cellular processes will change as you age, and you'll just crash because there isn't those processes still at work to put back balance from the excess you're doing. Whether this be overeating, over masturbating, over drug use, whatever it may be in excess. So part of this process is learning balance. Everyone says PMO is okay in balance, but really, what is balance? Do they ever teach you how to have balance? Balance means being in tune with your body. It requires you learn from your body. So this means paying attention and studying your own body, not just through medical advice, but actually paying close attention and noticing when you're picking out foods that make you feel bad after eating them and experimenting whether it was that or not. You're going to have some ups and downs doing this, but in the long run, it will save you so much more problems. You'll learn to prevent things before they occur, especially as you age. You'll fine-tune your brain to your body. In saying all this, it has a tremendous relation to PMO. By fine-tuning your brain to your body, you'll start to notice things that trigger you to PMO. You'll see what foods stimulate you. For example, peppers stimulate many people. They give them better orgasms because it's a heaty food, especially if mixed with meat, whereas it burns other people's intestines who cannot cope with it. So there isn't this one type of body for everyone which the medical field tends to single out. Experiments and scientific research does not always single this out when experimenting. Because why is it that someone could eat a whole lot of peppers all day from India, yet someone else in Europe cannot handle it without having a hernia? These things need to be taken into consideration. Perhaps the person from India has different cellular processes going on as they've adapted to this over time. and perhaps that branches over to other parts of the body and brain. So body types are a very important key step to learning about your body. The carnivore diet. The carnivore diet can do well for those suffering from digestive issues alongside PMO. Because of the degradation of the body PMO can cause, this can be a great way of eating to get that most nutrition out of the food you eat. As previously mentioned, if you have gut issues, you can feel real crap sometimes. And some dudes out there go and masturbate off to feel better. This just makes things so much worse. You just rob the body of more nutrients when your body cannot absorb nutrients due to SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or some other digestive issues. If the stomach isn't well, everything else just doesn't work, and the pancreas is what supports the stomach. The most underrated and under-talked about organ, the pancreas, is the center of helping the body. So something to consider if you have a digestive issue. Again, not enough time to go through all this in one video. I'll make videos about this in the near future. Okay, mindset. When you feel you are getting stressed or you have just real tiredness from exercise, you need mechanisms in place to relax. Of course, you want to do this while you are working on your goals. So set aside work that can be done by going for walks in nature. The mindset you need to go into this with is really pornography and masturbation and are just childish behaviors. They really are not funny things. They are seriously childish and a lame world someone can live in. And you don't know until you're a few years out of that habit. And you start to feel sorry for those going through this habit. How they're missing out on a life out there that they are too scared to approach. So they seek safety and comfort of inside the bedroom to seek out deep pleasures of life. The mindset you need to approach this with is masculine human beings do not go through what you're going through. Picture yourself around 10 of the most masculine people you know. Do you think you could open up about your masturbation habits to them and they would not make you feel like shit? Do you think they feel sorry you are a masturbator? That you're too chicken to go out and seek real women? How lame are you? You should be ashamed of yourself. And then you like to blame your parents and you're horseshitting yourself deep down to continue a habit. We truly horseshit ourselves for our habitual desires. We justify them. And you'd be surprised how bad you justify them until a stressful event hits you and you're like, what the hell have I done? Some of you out there would even convince that the benefits of no FAP are not good enough for me to quit it. Why the hell do you need to have enough benefits to quit masturbating? It carries no meaning. What meaning does masturbating carry really? It neither fulfills a reproductive aim which your reproductive organisms are designed for. The two main desires we have is eating and the need for reproduction. The funny thing though is that both of these are used the wrong way in today's society. We eat for pleasure, whereas it was designed as a means to help you survive. Without food, your sexual desire does not wake up as much as it would if there was an abundance of food. So the more food, the higher chances of sexual desire. Because now that human is in an abundance of food and can reproduce as much as possible for higher chance of survival of human population. The second desire, which is of reproduction, really is to continue the human race. Yet it's used to jerk off to porn. I mean, what the fuck? How far away are you from reality, right? I mean, what the hell? How far away are you from reality? Right? We trade logic for emotion. And this is one of the things we don't realize how fucked our minds are. We really are in loss when it's used the wrong way. But your whole mindset and lifestyle is so screwed, that's why you've never thought of this as it is. You've never thought, gee, why do I feel this way, yet it's a reproductive mechanism making me feel this way? Because perhaps you should feel desired to have sex. So you actually do it, but not solely for pleasure. The most successful people I know don't care about sex. They realize that it's just a fleeting desire that can be controlled. They are logical. They tell their dick to shut up when it's craving for sex. They put higher priorities than satisfying. They're not weak like most of you out there. They haven't learned to look at PMO as a low degrading act, and they don't chill with people who do that stuff. That's why they never get into it. Do you think Donald Trump or Elon Musk chills with masturbators? Do you think Andrew Tate would chill with you and your low self-degrading act? How would that make his life better? It won't. It would make it worse. They would think you're a useless hoe to a computer. And the other person who created the Pornhub site is laughing at you and making money off you while you slowly destroy yourself. Look back at your life when you're in your 30s and how you wasted so much time that could have been used to live a fulfilling life and make other people's lives better. If this video doesn't do it for you, I'm telling you, your chances of getting over masturbating is really low. Almost to none. There's nothing left for you to learn. There's no more tools required. So are you going to challenge me? You just have to man up. This stuff doesn't need therapy. It just requires you to get out of being a weak human being and identify yourself as a masculine human being. The masculine generation does not accept this quality as being a man. So either you're a man or you're a pussy and you give up. If you don't give up this habit, you're going to face big consequences. You're already facing smaller ones today, day by day, that you don't see occurring in your mind, in your body, in your life. There are things you're missing out on, which is a consequence of your pathetic actions. Your body is degrading to some degree as well as your mind, but you don't see the effects your body is compensating for it, and your mind is in a different reality. You know this habit should look disgusting to you. It should look pathetic to you. It looks pathetic to me, and so does it look pathetic to successful people. If you are around people who don't see it as pathetic, you're pathetic yourself and need to get new friends. Go make some goals and start aligning yourself with people 10 times as strong as you. Get to a boxing gym where masturbators don't go. Don't go crying like a pussy to a therapist. You don't need a therapist to dwell on your problem and try to figure out where you got this problem from. That does nothing for you. That doesn't show you how to get over it. You just need to man up. If I sent you to war and made you suffer for a couple of months, you'd get over this crap. You'd become a man and be so horrified you wouldn't want to be in such a difficult circumstance again, that you'd get to life quicker and become successful. So you'd force yourself to quit this behavior. Finding out where you got addicted does not get you out of the addiction. There's a purpose to your sexual organs. It's not there to make you play with it. It feels good because its objective is to pull you into reproduction. That's why. That's why we do it. Not to play with your weenie over some video that existed in a different reality and different time. So stop trancing yourself into this crap. Rise up. Rise out of it. Keep going at this habit and you'll realize how fucked you're going to get. You're going to suffer the consequences sooner rather than later. So why not go on and enjoy balance and better things in life than learning at an old age and being in regret and shame when it's more difficult to quit, when you're a weak fuck. Life is just difficult as a man. It's depressing. It's just life. Life is made to survive, not to be happy all the time. No book on survival says you have to be happy, so get over it. You need to be able to take stress. It's part of life. You should refuse to be a crybaby about it. You waste a tremendous amount of time. Add up all the hours you've spent getting ready to watch porn. The moment you've waited for your guests to get out of your house so you can run to the room. The amount of thinking, scrolling. Add that up. Perhaps in your lifetime you'd reach at least 5 years. And that's not to mention the other years you waste because you threw all your motivation onto some video. All you did was watch people have sex and you got turned on by it. You don't get turned on by yourself having sex. That's such a stupid way of life. You could spend all that 5 years or more having sex yourself and being in love, but you're probably too pussy to feel in love also. Don't you see how fucked your mind is? This is not motivation to rev you up. This is what you're doing at the moment. You need to get out of this pit you've put yourself into and rise up. You're living a pathetic life to a pathetic habit you think you have no control over because someone told you it's okay to do this. Fuck that. It's not okay. Who is that person to tell you it's okay? Who gave them authority? Was it a doctor? Is a doctor a therapist? Does a therapist know your past? Is a therapist your father? Is a therapist God? The doctor's job is not to tell you it's psychologically okay to fap. Has he ever had the habit himself? Hell no. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Your kids ask you what you did for a living, dad, and that's even if you have enough balls to get married and have kids and treat them well and make your entire family successful, which is probably beyond your realm at the moment. Your kids ask you what you did for a living and you say, oh son, I was a tosser. I was busy getting computers pregnant and having an affair with my hand at that time. Pathetic.
And you might say, well, I don't want kids. Okay, don't. You're missing out on something great because you're too pussy to have kids. And you're going to keep jerking those dopamine cells off. And soon it's going to habituate and you're going to get bored of it. And then you will be close to your 40s, and now when the brain is tired of the repetitive behavior and wants to quit, it wants something new. But then it's too late. Your hormonal pathways would have changed by then and wanted love and connection more, something you never tasted, because materialistic things don't make you happy anymore. And now you're in such bad shape both physically and mentally, perhaps a big fat belly with a skinny bony body, or a big head with a small body, blood sugar problems, roller coaster periods of happiness and unhappiness, jumping from goal to goal because you're so used to new spikes of cognitive behavior, and then you start to realize what's going on, and you want to get married or date women now. Now you have to work so hard to unscrew everything, and get over the periods you now suffer at this age of 36 or whatever, build self-esteem to get out and meet women and go to the gym, and you only have like 10 years of life left in you, and you became a nobody. You provided nothing good for neither yourself nor society, and you missed out on the fruits of your youth. You spent it all inside, tossing. Don't give me that response, I'm going to change my hoo-ha. Get logical with yourself. You know ice cream is bad for you, yet you feel you can't quit. Feeling is different than doing. Look, there's a blessing in what you're going through, and that is you have the opportunity to learn to control your mind and do whatever you tell it to. Every super successful boxer, every super successful person isn't born with the ability to control their emotions and desires. They learned that in private. The results are shown to you In public.
The monks take 20 plus years to control the nerves going from their brain to their limbs so they feel no pain. Do you know how it feels to achieve the state of getting kicked in the balls and feeling nothing? This takes training. Average people get average jobs and have average minds. Why do you see so many people who get controlled by women? Why do you see so many people who say, oh, I was in the moment, I couldn't help myself to do that? It's because they're responding to the lack of discipline and control over their minds. And you know what's the best part? They've been in therapy for so many years, yet the psychologists themselves were snowflakes. Imagine if your psychologist wasn't a snowflake and got results. Would you run away from his practice? So why don't you think a little? Testosterone. Low-grade, low testosterone shrinks your balls. Ejaculation can leave you motivationless if your body cannot keep up with the orgasm's demands. You've been at it for so long that your body lacks willpower because of lack of nutrition. People who are high on human growth hormone and high on their lives can get back to their goals after you've finished having sex. You probably already are a fapper, and I do not congratulate you on that. So try this step by step. And my intention with this is to get you to realize something. Start scrolling on porn, and as you're looking at the images, my goal with this is not to get you to orgasm. I want you to realize this. Here's a step by step. Start scrolling on porn, and as you're looking at the images, say, so what? What now after I've enjoyed the 30-second rush? What then? Then think of an alternative activity you can do that requires you leave the computer. Ideally, it should be a goal you're focusing on. Because without goals, it's difficult to quit this. This is why I emphasize goals here so much. A goal that pulls you in, so that it requires no energy for you to get off the computer. That you don't go onto YouTube from there and then back onto Pornhub and go back and forth between convincing yourself to do this silly act. So ask, what is an alternative I can do to this? And if it's not a goal, then go right away and work out. Turn that energy into anger if need be and go and hit the boxing bag. And use that energy you have to build muscle. So again, once you started scrolling and you're looking at the images, ask yourself, so what? What now? What then? And just pay attention to the responses that you get. Life will start to feel meaningless in that act. So go slow, and we're going to desensitize yourself to it. When you look at the video, don't get sucked into it. If you notice you're getting sucked in, quickly pull yourself out. Now, see yourself looking at this pornography from the corner of your room. A view where you're looking at yourself watching pornography. Now, how do you see yourself? How do we get over PMO? You have to realize that the reason you enjoy porn is you hallucinate how it would feel like if you're in their position. As in, you start going into this deep reality where you hallucinate a lady perhaps riding on top of you. And this takes practice. The more times you do this, the deeper you hallucinate, until you're so much into the hallucination, so deep into the pit, that there's no way out until you orgasm. That's basically why 99% of people are addicted. So what do? We have to not want that. But how? You first have to look at this behavior as something ugly and useless. That it's something of low grade. That the people involved in creating this form of content are people of low worth who are trying to make a buck using the pathway of the most basic human desire. They use this desire to make money, whereas it was designed for reproducing. They trade this reproductive need for views. It's the easiest form of money because desires are innate in us, just like selling alcohol. These sort of people benefit society in no way, and you only realize this when societies collapse, when people become like zombies and are just hooked. Now, of course, it helps to be knowledgeable about the subject and about sociology of life. The people involved in making this sort of content and spreading it out want to hook you to make a buck off you, while they can flourish themselves. Yet they never do PMO anyway, because the fact they don't care about you shows they don't think deep about life. Yet they never do anyway, because the fact they don't care about you shows they don't think deep about life. And they are the type that along in life fall into a pit and cry and whinge because they're so used to taking the easier way out and making a buck of a poor person like you who's addicted. But you know what? You're no different than them if you're participating in consuming their content and giving off your life to it through time and sperm. So you're way more at loss than them, because you are making nothing out of it in the end either. And the second thing right after that, and I mean right after that, is trade this behavior for something better and new. And it's the same old stuff anyway. Sex is just sex. There's nothing particularly interesting in it in reality. It's just a thrusting up and down, and you seek some pleasure from it like you would seek pleasure from drinking a cup of juice. It's only for 10 to 60 seconds of pleasure, all that hard work, all that mental thinking and regret and searching for answers and trying to stay away just for 60 seconds of intense pleasure. What an unworthy business deal that is. If you find yourself on a porn site, you may start fighting with the computer, clicking off the browser and back on, because it's pulling you in so much. You have to control your mind and say, no, I'm in power. This is my choice. Give the choice to yourself, and you choose how you execute your own actions. Never ever think you're fighting with something. This life is your own life, and you play out life on your own terms. Control is in your own hands, not some computer, not some stupid urge. Truly successful people get straight back to work after sex. That's how motivated they are for their goals. Most of them avoid sex. It doesn't interest them more than their goals. They become hungry to F the world. They have reached their point where their mind has made a complete shift and they enjoy achievement. And you don't know this because you've never had goals and you've locked yourself into this cyber reality. If you do find yourself on porn and watching it, just don't do anything. While you're on the site, let the feeling be there and just watch your feeling. Don't suck into your feelings. Just watch what your body does. You'd be amazed what would happen then. You start to disassociate from the feeling and start to think or ponder on what the hell are you doing watching this? The sensation or the urge starts to slow down to a point you can manage to think and get off the site. Become knowledgeable. If you just observe the facial expressions of the porn stars on the video, you realize they just have weird expressions as a human being. Like really stare at them and realize that it's all fake. The injections and drugs and the butt, they're all fake. If you're married and going on to porn, there's a serious problem. You could be making love with your wife, but you choose to trade that for a computerized reality. Like any logical human being would know to either get a divorce and stop having an affair with your computer, or get to the fact that you're getting turned on to videos and you lack the masculine courage to stop it. That's all I have to say for that. There's no other explanation needed. Stop it and man up. I don't like using the word relapse because it assumes you were once addicted to something. It comes with a negative connotation. I'd rather use the term up until now. Up until now, I ejaculated X days ago. This is a better mindset to deal with. Most people who relapse and use that term then bring a flood of bad emotions with them. So avoid the word relapse. Premature ejaculation. There are a couple of things you should know about premature ejaculation from the standpoint of health. I'll make videos on this going through the mental aspects and more on the health issue in the future of PE. What I want to say is sometimes premature ejaculation is not just due to the brain, but rather a loss of pelvic and gluteus muscles. This is due to the high cortisol which causes muscle loss around the thighs and buttocks. Have you ever noticed some old guys out there who have popped bellies and small chicken-like legs? They have this issue of diabetes. So cortisol is being pumped out to compensate because the blood sugar levels are not working properly. The cortisol breaks down the muscle around those areas and converts it to sugar to fuel the body. Now I just want to retract a little bit. I do not mean that pelvic and gluteus muscles alone are the only cause. But there is a correlation between small pelvic and gluteus muscles and premature ejaculation. So your lack of muscles down there can contribute to not having the ability to hold on to ejaculating. But this is not just the only thing, it's an observation I have made, and there are other things working at play. Because you have to remember, the same people who have this issue are more likely to have diabetes also. And a side effect of diabetes is erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. And I'll get into it deeper soon as to why that's the case. Because if you have this issue, you also have a blood sugar problem associated with it. So both need fixing. However, doing squats that target the gluteus muscles and not just the thighs alone, along with our intermittent fasting protocol and exercise, greatly helped speed up this recovery. We want to see progress, and the sooner we do, the better. This is why pelvic exercises or the start and stop techniques don't work for everybody.
There's too much gray area in these sorts of exercises. It's not a one size fit for all. If you're a diabetic, then you'll have destruction of the arteries surrounding the penis. That is obvious, and diabetic patients will know this. In fact, if you have had pre-diabetes for a while as a youngster, you're going to see these symptoms of diabetes in yourself. Because so much cortisol and insulin release is causing destruction of the autonomic nervous system. This is what I mean when I said I'll get into this. Which leads me to this word, autonomic nervous dysfunction or autonomic neuropathy. The autonomic nervous system runs on the background in your body. It controls things like temperature, digestion, certain fluidic functions, etc. When you have autonomic nervous dysfunction, you'll get symptoms, weird signs like difficulty sweating or sweating easily, either one. Tinnitus, coughing at night, irregular heart rhythm, changes in temperature that is unexplainable, dry eyes, premature ejaculation, issues sleeping, digestive problems, sometimes a high pulse rate and sometimes a low pulse rate, sensitive to light and sounds, perhaps why you like masturbating in dark rooms, don't you? Urinating more? The first two signs that your autonomic nervous system is breaking down is you get bladder issues at night, like constantly getting up to urinate at night, and you feel dizzy if you stand up too fast. This ANS system, short for autonomic nervous system, is in place to keep the body in homeostasis, in other words, balance. So there's something causing the destruction of this. There is an abrupt loss of balance, so that can be a cause of premature ejaculation. Now, the cure to this is intermittent fasting, healthy diet, and quitting PMO. The body will start to repair itself, and good amounts of meat with high fat content, as in animal fat, because you're repairing organs, remember. The autonomic nervous system is made up of three other parts: the fight or flight, which we call sympathetic, the parasympathetic for recovery of stress, and the last system is the interim, which is for digestion. This system runs through the body and helps control bodily functions. So you need to find out what's causing this. It could be you have a gut issue that is now affecting the system, or it could be a combination of not allowing enough recovery from too much stress that has led you to some health issue now, such as prediabetes, or a combination of both. In my research, I've always found this person pushes themselves too much with PMO and junk food, and they end up with this issue. This autonomic nervous system dysfunction is a series of symptoms that comes in combination with some other health problems. So you need to figure out the main health issue, build a strong body, do intermittent fasting alongside it, and that will also heal up the autonomic nervous system when the main health issue is adhered to. Ever noticed when you're at the beach or in the woods that even if you feel like crap, it's as though your health issue just goes away? The eye floaters, the tiredness, and you just feel this relaxation. That's the autonomic nervous system recovering. But of course, you can't always be at the beach. And when you go back home, the main health issue symptoms show up. Overworking the adrenal glands, the glands that make your hormones and are involved in a percentage of sperm production, can lead to this dysfunction. You want to know the most interesting thing though? Diabetes is the most common cause of this dysfunction. So just because you haven't been diagnosed doesn't mean you don't have pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes is difficult to figure out in young people. It doesn't always show up in a blood sugar test because the increase in insulin is masking it. So you have to do a homo-IR test to see your insulin levels. So you can do a homo-IR test to see your insulin levels to see if you're excreting excess insulin. This is how we can lead back to what's causing this autonomic nervous dysfunction that your perverted habit has added to or caused. And do keep in mind, this doesn't show up overnight. It's a slow, gradual process where the symptoms get worse by time. Do you see how the body needs to be examined in a web of connection of related health symptoms? It's not just a one go-to symptom solution like the medical field has for so long done. It's just not natural to have sex 5 times a day, ejaculating 5 times a day. My goodness, one long session with a girl is enough than rocking yourself 5 times a day, 7 times a week. That's like a job. That is 35 ejaculations in a week. Now over a period of a year, that is 1,820 ejaculations. My goodness, how have we gotten to this? How much blood loss have you had? How much hormones? How much life? Not one person can even sleep with 1,820 girls in a year that easy. That just drains the body entirely. Come on guys, wake up. And I know a lot of you go for marathons out there, so you put in that extra effort to fuck your lives over. I want you to notice after you eat how you feel in terms of sex. Do you feel this sort of weird energy in your body or groin area if you suffer from PE? Then you can be guaranteed you do have a gut-related issue causing this. And perhaps an overall issue really stemming perhaps from pre-diabetes, which is in tandem with the gut issue affecting your autonomic nervous system. Let's look at another scenario of premature ejaculation. Perhaps you've taught yourself to prematurely ejaculate. Say you wanted to rush and get one in. You stimulated the tip of your penis so much to push yourself over the edge, either because the content you were looking at was not stimulating enough, or because you were rushing to orgasm before someone came home and saw you. As if it was some ritual you had to get over with as soon as possible because you were stuck with it. Silly, isn't it? You'll sometimes notice this if you need to stimulate the tip of your penis in order to really get hard on, like you're pushing yourself over the edge forcefully. But you don't realize this as you're being aroused. You only realize you need to hit that tip of your penis to keep going. If you're rubbing the middle of your penis and notice you're just not getting as turned on and you need to reach for the tip, then you should probably just stop masturbating now. You've overdone yourself and making things worse. So that's another observation I've noticed from my research on premature ejaculation. The second obvious thing, over time, the content you see doesn't get you off like it used to. It doesn't trigger enough pleasure because it is old. You've seen those moves of the doggy style done so many times. You want some beauty, some attraction, some theme like romance, something out there. Perhaps even some BDSM if you've been at it long enough. Just as a side note, it is quite weird people want BDSM porn yet they are too pussy themselves to go out and get girls and do the same to them. Doesn't that make you look like a demasculinized, contradictory person? Think about that. Another scenario of PE. A lot of you out there turn yourselves on before even watching porn. Like you make the nerve pathway from the tip of your penis to your brain so receptive that later on when you have sex, just the tip going in will make you come quicker. But if you masturbated the middle part of your penis, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't feel the same. And that's because the tip of the ends is the part that turns you on the most. But some of you out there feel it before it even starts. And you feel it much more by rubbing the tip of the penis, because you're all alone in the room without a computer. You don't realize that the tip is the most stimulating part. All you're doing is responding to your hand and the pleasure that you're getting from the tip. If you're struggling with PMO, you don't have the consequence strategy repertoire in your head. You haven't taught yourself or haven't stumbled upon the strategy to think of the consequences of things. This tends to happen in more powerful men who are not afraid. They don't really go through all the good and bad things that can happen due to an action. Politicians who run big countries have this really well. They know what the consequences of each action does. But school doesn't teach you this. They just say, follow the rules. They don't emphasize what else could happen as a sub-consequence of the consequence. So you need to learn this, not just for PMO, but for life also. And this is very, very important, to be able to see and feel what happens after you've ejaculated. You then ask, so what? So what after I'm done ejaculating? Life is going to go on. I'm going to get on a low again and feel like crap. Might as well get to feeling good now without that PMO. Talking to yourself like this, and what you say to yourself is different for each person, but the basic mechanism is what I just described. Run through what will happen 5 minutes after you've masturbated, versus an hour, versus a day, versus a week, versus a month, versus a year, versus a decade, if you continued this act. Think of the effects in terms of your health, in terms of your family, in terms of work, in terms of your body, in terms of social interactions, in terms of where you'll be in life. What if an earthquake came abruptly and you're in your act? Would that fear that gets triggered in you make you want to change then? And this leads me to YouTube and free time will lead you back to pornography websites. So we need goals. You've got to understand that it's a bad business deal to watch porn, that some people will feel like it's not hurting their masculinity to watch porn. They deny it, but it is totally affecting it, and they're too chicken to admit it. Generally, ignorant people are in a certain state before they do this. Like they're happy, life is good, you just came back from your friend's place, or a football match, and now you are so high on the world that you want even more. You make the room cozy, switch on your computer, and off you are on your rocket ship of emotions to Pornhub. Look, after this video, you're all revved up and want to change your life. But some of you out there are ignorant. You are motivated at the moment, and you forget what happened the next morning you wake up. So you need to practice this in your mind every day. It's going to be difficult, especially if your health is in a bad condition, especially if you are not disciplined. You're going to have hiccups, but don't generalize and say, oh my gosh, I'll never get this done. I'll never get over it. You've gone 7 days without PMO. Good. One time ejaculating isn't going to screw things up. As long as you're moving forward with your intermittent fasting and goals that you've written down, just keep moving forward and advance each time. You can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow. It could be springtime. It could be a hot girl comes to your house. You might accidentally scroll through content on Instagram, or you just find yourself in an automatic response on porn. Look at it. Don't shy away from it, but zap out of it and disassociate any feelings you have from it. Disassociate by asking yourself questions like, so what? What's after this? You'll now think of the consequences post-ejaculation. Use anything to snap you out of it. Electrocute yourself if you need to, and I mean that metaphorically. But if you've been listening to what I've said, you'll stop anything leading yourself to that. However, you have to have things in place to catch you out of it when porn is in front of you. And that goes for stimuli also. Sometimes you just can't think, and it happened. Move on straight away. Don't dread so much, but think about what sequence of events led up to it, so you have a plan in place for next time. Because this is a learning process. No one has taught you this. This is new. Porn wasn't around in our ancestors' times. They couldn't write books about it. And there were masculine men who never shied away from their sexuality to women. It's a new virus stemming around, and 1 or 2 generations are going to suffer the consequences before changes are made. But by then, it would be too late. People would be too demasculinized and busy filling their bellies instead of trying to remove porn from the internet. So the fight has to be within ourselves, not against them.
But there's going to be a few out there who just won't make it. They're just too soft. They don't like change. They like it the way it is. And for these people, even the biggest events cannot stop them. They're just out there to have no hope for themselves. For those, you chose that decision. So you'll face the consequences yourself, no matter how much you deny it or respond in a polar manner to me. So don't be those. How much more convincing would you need? Do you need scientific literature to prove to you? If you do, I guarantee you'll never give up. You'll find a reason, because you're observant of the fact already. Yet you do not convince yourself with the knowledge you already have to know the things you're missing out on enjoying, and the damage it's causing you and society already. So what will a scientific paper do for you? You're not convinced with your own words, and you want to be convinced by reading about it? You then just want practical results, and the only practical results will be when you fall ill. Just the whole idea of pornography and the people involved in making of the video, the director, the porn stars, you participating and receiving from them behind your computer screen, and the whole entire industry that makes all this money is disgusting. You should be disgusted by it all. If you can't see what's disgusting about it, you need to look at lives that have been ruined. Human beings who have had their potential zapped because of this. The way how the devil led you step by step until sex has no more meaning and becomes BDSM. How you're letting them program you as a bunny to participate in giving them views and make ad revenue. I mean, name one thing that's good about PMO. Don't give me the horse crap that you're enjoying it. You can do that with women, you illegitimate weak man. It kills motivation. You're going hardcore on your dopamine reserve. Yes, it is a finite reserve of dopamine. You don't work out. You don't practice being motivated. All you do is fap all day. You're a fapping chicken. You don't feel happy with small things anymore. You need big hits always to stay stimulated. Don't waste your time saying I'm going to wait for my health to be good, then get on to goals. Start now and start measuring your goals. You can't foresee how your health gets better. It's the most extremely difficult thing to measure in all of learning. If we had it all sorted, we wouldn't be in this situation today. You're high on this masturbation. You're so high you're in a different reality. You don't know what's going on with the world. You're not in the reality of normal everyday people going to work and coming back home. You're just thinking of the next session, and you don't even count how much you've consumed. What's wrong with you really? I should come out through the screen and slap you. PMO is not natural. Do you know what natural is? Do you know what natural means? It will never ever let you achieve your full potential. Even if athletes come out and admit it, they'll never reach what they could have reached if they hadn't have done the act. There's no legendary person in life who masturbated or did porn. Don't hide your sexual feelings. I don't mean go and talk dirty on the street or amongst your friends, but make no apologies for the man that you are and the innate feelings you've been given. When you don't shy away from your feelings, you give yourself so much power. You say to all the women out there, I see you dressing provocatively, even if it's not your main intention to, but I am attracted to you, the same way you are making yourself attractive. And if I feel you have good taste, I make no apologies for moving forward and pursuing you. And I am in control of my feelings and how the interaction will go, if it goes somewhere. Because I'm going to work hard on my life to be successful, and I don't give in to cheap materialistic things like other weenies would give into. If we've fallen into a relationship, I will carry out my desires on you and give you the greatest experience you've ever had in all forms. Some people are going to twist that and call that misogynistic, but it's got no evidence of it. They're either working for the porn industry by spending their time masturbating off to porn, or they have some other agenda. We don't care. Sometimes harsh things need to be said in order for you to change, because it's the harsh realities that get most people to change. If you can live without sex for a period of time, you're doing good in life, you're happy. But if you can't, then you need a huge change in chemical brain activity to bring you back up to wanting more than the so-called highest achievement of sex. Really, people who masturbate are just running away from their crappy life. They are not internally happy. Something is bothering them outside, and they are triggered to get out of that depression, perhaps through PMO. It could be that they are just depressed. Then they find this habit takes them out of the depression, and what was getting them out of the depressed state before has now become a habit. They could be looking at celebrities and getting the idea of, wow, what a happy lifestyle they have. Then feel depressed about their own, and so they go off to masturbate to porn to feel better. So there's things in the environment triggering this for a fact, and we need to work on our own psychology and body together to stop this self-destructing habit. And we need to consider the mind and the body, not separate them like science wants you to think. When hormones play up, they affect the brain, and when the brain sees stimuli, it can affect hormones. So we need to consider these two things together and control both. That requires tuning into the nerves and feelings you get in your gut, to recognizing where that could have stemmed from, and from there learning what triggers your psychological behaviors. This is easier said than done, for sure, but it requires practice. And why do you need to learn this? Because you and your body are the only things that are important before everything else in the world. Without you, there is no God for you. There is no purpose, there is nothing else for you, because you'd cease to exist then. And in order for you to survive in this world, it requires you learn about yourself before anything else. One of the things that feeds this addiction is endless novelty. Go on any porn site and type in any search term, something will show up. It's like it's its own Google. So you can never get bored of porn. That's the extreme danger of it. There's just never getting bored, and so you can search for the rest of your life and never get bored. It's a dangerous tactic used. Imagine if porn had the same sort of scenes and people. You'd just get bored and give up on it. So understand there is novelty, and you just need to be satisfied with enough. You need that balance and to say to yourself, it's in front of me. I don't care. It's just sex. It's the same thing in different positions. It feels the same no matter what type of penis is going inside of what type of vagina. There is only differences in looks and sounds. And enough is enough. You want to get to a point that the stimuli you are receiving has no more effect on your brain. As in, don't let it have any more feeling. If you're using sex dolls, shame on you. Shame on you for being a pussy and not going out into the world. Before we even speak about getting ourselves out of triggers, is to not fight or feed your urge. You cannot always be aroused, understand that, and eventually it has to go, given enough time. So as long as you don't fight your urge and don't feed it with content, eventually it has to go. You change the form of the energy it has into something useful, like exercise. Like you can't be angry forever, can you? So let its energy fade. And eating too much gives energy back to things, so minimize the eating. It's well known from our ancestors, if you read their books, that the ones who have a strong sexual desire have a strong desire to eat also. So have yourself desensitized to masturbation first, and then the watching of porn be looked at as disgusting. You chill with your PP and computer 5 times a day. You have now got no day left or night left to be around things that are productive, and no time to even learn about the world through experience. You're too busy rubbing. If you rubbed a car, at least you'd make money, and by spending it on good things, ascend your way up. The number one barrier to healing is low, long-term chronic stress, which masturbation and ejaculation in excess does. You cannot run away from triggers. You got to be able to look at it and not be turned on. So this means you have to be ready for it. Be ready so many times it becomes unconscious to you. Until you get to the point you're like, fuck, this is boring. You get no sensation from it. And as an aside, fetishes are a killer. They give you the big reasons to get back into PMO, especially when you can't execute the fetish in real life. So hopefully you get married one day and enjoy fetishes with your loved one. You have to get rid of fantasies. Fantasies are what keep you stuck to this habit. Fantasies are like goals where you do nothing. They are dreams where you do nothing. Humans get triggered to masturbate off to porn in different ways. One way is in the video you are imagining yourself in the position of the characters in the scene. That's why POV
or point of view are the worst videos to watch. And then you practice this every time you see a girl or a similar like video to turn yourself on. And before you know it, you start imagining everywhere you go without the need for porn. You train yourself and then you screw yourself over time. Whenever you watch, don't suck into the video. Don't feel like, how would it feel to be in the position of the porn star? Because they are just images you're seeing in some other reality that's not even real. A camera reality. It was a past event. Notice, it's the same repeated behavior over and over again. It's just jumping up and down with some moans, and until there is enough energy produced that one climaxes. The worst part is when there's music added to it. The music is a more enhancer to pulling you into the porn video. You'll only get over it when you realize it's disgusting. Sex is an animalistic act, and humans are supposed to go on to each other while staying in a state of humanness to fulfilling their desire. Imagine putting a camera in the room and just watching yourself do this. It's far different than touching another person's body. You probably even hold your own breasts to turn yourself on. And you make a romantic environment, and some of you are just dirty and just push yourselves over sex. You go extremes. One type of urge is you making pictures in your head of doing some pornographic action or seeing yourself get onto the computer. This may be so deep in your unconscious that it's difficult to catch, or you remember some scene or relating everything you see in the environment to pornography. It's become such a habitual habit that you don't stop to think about the wrong you're doing. But it's not reality, it's a hallucination moment, like seeing yourself having sex with a lady on the street. This is not natural. You take off her clothes in your head and have all sorts of dirty thoughts. Normal people don't do this. They don't stress their brains out this way. Now come back to reality. It's not like that. What's in your head is not correct. And the same is true for all other areas of life. Sometimes we are just so used to high amounts of dopamine being triggered that as we're over PMO, that we feel an emptiness. Cigarette smokers face this from time to time also. The lack of nicotine in their bodies over time makes the body almost reminisce about it. And when we have stress or bored moments, we can just, by the play of the right music, we can ignore the PMO and get away with just music, as it's a lower form of dopamine trigger release. If you get urges, then go and do something extreme right away. Just push yourself with that urge that's lingering in your penile area. Go jump inside a pool. Do some extremely intense exercise. Lift an extremely heavy weight. Of course, don't be silly. Slap your penis. Whatever. Just something extreme that gets you out of the moment. This will do two things. One, it will push the energy away. And two, it will help you get over your fears. Having less fears is what will get you out of this addiction also. The less fear you have, the higher chance you have of finding things out in the world that you can enjoy doing. You're not going to get blue balls if you hold your semen in. If you have a less caloric intake, it's going to be reused instead of your testes forcefully producing sperm due to this high amounts of food coming in. You think out of all the years your body has been taking care of you, all of a sudden, after a few days of holding your semen in, someone on the internet tells you it's dangerous? You need to think a bit more and not convince yourself to stay in the habit. You don't need science to know this. You just know motivation comes down to a certain extent after sex. Whether that be for 10 minutes or 10 days, it occurs. There are scenarios where a person can ejaculate before they're even hard, or right when they get hard. Look at prediabetes for this. If you find when eating lots of saturated fat that you feel stuffed, then try to cut down the meaty portion more. And if that doesn't work, then cut down the saturated fat a bit and exercise it off, because that means you're eating too much. You need to cut that down. You have more than enough to recover. You don't need loads. The body can handle doing recovery with small amounts of fat as long as it's consistently receiving daily intake of it. So adjust. There's no rules to this. And the same when you eat protein. You don't need that much protein like people make you think. Small amounts every day is better than large chunks.
You don't want to hurt your kidneys also, and don't want to stimulate your sexual desire too much with too much meat. That's why I say focus on fatty portions of meat, like fatty mince. And the most important thing is to exercise. Exercise will burn off that excess protein and fat from the food you eat and turn that into bone and muscle strength, which will help you in your quest to having a physically stronger body and getting out of the pits of PMO. If you make any addiction look negative to yourself and just stay away from it long enough, eventually you'll get over it. One more thing to do, and is the most important, is to be patient when you have the urge. Don't rush it at all. It will eventually lose energy and flatten out. When you ejaculate and you feel like doing it again, then you must ignore it and tell yourself enough is enough and feel that enough is enough in your body, reversing the feelings that are pushing you into a backwards manner. Some people, I have noticed in my research, get triggers when they have a gallbladder issue. This falls into digestive issue problems. I say gallbladder because it's difficult to pinpoint whether it's in the stomach, liver, or gut. But the gallbladder releases concentrated bile, which is important for keeping gut microbes out, and which is also important for the autonomic nervous dysfunction. This is complicated to discuss in one video, but if you notice after eating, especially when you're fasting, that you have pain in the upper right back and shoulder, and you feel like you need to massage it, and it's making you nauseous and want relief via ejaculation or something, then do realize you are having a gallbladder problem. How you know is get someone to massage that area. Notice if it goes away or gets better. Does that work? Then you need to sort out your gallbladder issue. You may be eating too much or require bile salts and some digestive enzymes. Socializing requires you have no fear and get out there and meet anyone. But do not embarrass yourself. You start to see other people's lives and how they go about it, so you can change yours. Meeting 10,000 new people and hearing their deep conversations helps you change your life, not hanging with the same lame friends you always hang with. If you stay away from some addiction long enough, there's a high chance you'll get over it and not be triggered as much when you see it later in the future, especially when you stay away from it and replace that addiction with something new, whether that be hardcore exercise or whatever else. This area of life is the easiest area to lie in because the idea of ejaculation is an area of desire. Ejaculation in itself doesn't mean anything except getting off life. It just has an associated deep dopamine feeling attached to it to make you want to achieve that state. It's not like a car where you can choose to drive it or not. You can't not have sex. So it's very easy for you to convince yourself and for others to lie to you and sell you garbage in this area of life. Masturbating is not the same as sex. In sex, you receive feminine energy back, that calmness. I don't know the science to it, but it has an effect from a chemical perspective. There is less entropy, but in masturbating, you're just giving it all. You're pushing yourself to get stimulated by the pictures. There's no touch of another body, no feeling of other neurons. So you're just wasting your time fantasizing about it being the same as sex. And no one's a god. Everyone's going to run out of energy sometime or another if they don't practice balance. Boxers relax after training camps. What about you and your fapping camp? Do you ever have days off? Think. Massages are a great concept to showing you how to execute sexual urges over time. You learn low-grade enjoying relaxation, that which sex is supposed to give, instead of a demon-like going hard pulling your testicles over your back and carrying your penis over your shoulder. I keep giving all the reasons to stop it, but if you keep doing it, if you keep busting it out and you give it terminology that makes you feel better about it, then you're not going to get anywhere. So let's move on. There is a connection between testosterone and masculinity. There has been a pattern of snowflakiness and a low amount of testosterone.
Not being fearful of things is not just in your mind. There's a connection, and it's not totally hormonal related to testosterone, and it's not totally fully mind sort of idea. Although both can influence each other. Having high testosterone will help to a certain extent to being brave. It is related to how much muscle you have. If you work out and notice muscle loss instead of lack thereof, there is some form of low testosterone. And it is related to how small your testicles can get, or do get. There's lower amounts of body hair, and slowly starting to get a female sort of voice. And testosterone does lower as you age, hence your lower sexual drive as you age. So you better capture it soon before there's no coming back. And you should be afraid if you're on PMO. You're wasting this vital nutrient that can make you stand out. It's not just constant ejaculation lowering testosterone, it's also the cortisol. But there are lifestyle changes you're also not doing. You're not working out, so you're not boosting testosterone either way, are you? You're not doing things that can fear you, like going parachuting, boxing, because you're so weak you are too afraid to get out there. And so you have the added bonus of lowering your testosterone with each FAP. While there is a relationship between testosterone levels and masculinity, it's not wholly a direct one. All we know is that there is a relationship there. Low amounts of zinc in the body can also cause muscle loss, by the way. So look at your muscles after you shoot some stars in your next session. It can also cause being fogged out because the brain requires it to function. Being fogged out can also be due to low blood sugar, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or some other issue. A normal person doesn't fog out after masturbating and is not in a state of fogginess. I hate to break it to everyone, but just being a man and doing manly things is the easiest way to get out of this habit. Learning and doing what masculine humans do is the only way you can get out of this, because any masculine man would stay away from this, not the ones they picture to you on the media or they feed you in the news. It's truly about hanging around men who have been in war, who have gone through lots of pain, and receiving the energy through interaction and just hanging around them. Put yourself in a family of women, and you'll become feminine over time. Put yourself amongst 5 MMA fighters, and over time you'll learn MMA and become like them. So how much more convincing do you need? The only way you're going to get out of this habit is to stay around super masculine men who looks down to that stuff. You're going to have to divorce your computer and your hand and any porn sites. You may need to move out of the groups of weak people you chill with, even if it's just 2 of you. They are triggers for you that you do not realize. Don't be shy or think your masculinity will be hurt that you're on NoFap. You don't need to put yourself in the category of NoFap. Just quit and get on with life. Because then you'd be lying to yourself. The fact you fap, you're not masculine. You're a pussy, you do it. There is no soft side to this. Because the opposite side of the pendulum is you're a masculine man who makes no apologies for the sexual nature he was born with. And for a lot of you religious people out there, getting married isn't going to fix your porn addiction. Initially it may, but you'll get triggers for porn again. And that's when you need to fix up how you have sex with your wife and look at porn as a disgusting act. That's the only way to it. So get marriage out of your mind first if you're not married. Clean yourself like you religious people out there expect your wife to be. Then think about marriage. Because you can be in an affair with your computer. Carrying this dirty mindset into a marriage is toxic. And of course, you always bullshit yourself that I'm going to go in and leave my past. There is no such thing as that. I don't know who told you that. However, I have seen some places where marriage does work to eliminate pornography, especially if you are really young, where porn has trojanated your mind. But that's rare. You wouldn't want to not be able to perform on your first night. So educate yourself first. Marriage takes understanding of the world, and if you don't understand your own psychological triggers, how would you understand your wife? I don't mean you have to know every single thing. There comes to a point where you're masculine enough and brave enough to get married, that you should.
It's better than chasing women in clubs. Over time, you'll get over this addiction. Your brain will grow as you age. So we need to make the most of this time we have before we get to that age. This is why in the Middle East, it's emphasized to get married. That early marriages gets you over your sexual urges and lets you focus on the important things in life, and hence you become more successful. In conclusion, this course, this presentation, however you want to look at it, was really to cover all the reasons as to why you should quit, to make you think of this act differently, and to give you the tools to recover. You have everything in front of you in order to start. In reality, you don't need any convincing, but your mind is so wanting to jerk off, you need an encyclopedia to get over this nofap. So really, PMO is all a waste of time. All you need to do is wake up to reality and get off this shit, and protect your health. To stop the urges, because your health can deteriorate. Fapping is not some evil antichrist in your pants. Just stop overthinking and get over the silly act. You only get to your porn addiction when you come to reality with how the world works, and you convince yourself of how the world works. Don't realize this when you've screwed your body over and your mind. You won't realize you are getting screwed over. Ask a diabetic if they knew they were getting onto diabetes. Majority of them would say no, because there's something called pre-diabetes, where the body upregulates and you don't see the destruction it's causing or notice it. Hormones are unregulated momentarily until the body collapses. The same thing happens with the mind also. You don't need a Discord server or some Reddit post motivating you. They're not going to save you when you're urging, and it shows you can't control your mind without others' help. When you're posting on forums, help, I'm about to urge off. You need to be a psychologically fit human being. Sometimes you'll be all alone in life, much like a person in the army in war. No one's going to be there to help you. So asking people online to stop you from urging isn't useful, and it's the wrong mentality. There needs to be a total cold turkey change, and a few bumps here and there are inevitable. But once done, say to yourself, it's over. Now rise back up. Each time chant to yourself, rise up. There's no damage done to you that you cannot fix quickly. Exchange your addiction for some other hobby. It's gone now. It doesn't come back unless you make it yourself consciously. And secondly, the health damage can be a great booster for you to live a more fulfilling life by exercising and getting into some hardcore sports. Getting into boxing will nag you out of it. Something extreme, any extreme sport, as long as it's legal, and ethical and moral. As I said in the beginning of this presentation, the reason you're in this case of PMO is you don't truly take out time to think about life. Nature has chosen you amongst the other people in life. People who become addicts can become one of the smartest in the world because imagery gets to them. But the same mechanism that can help them attain incredible achievements is what the pathway of porn uses to ruin them. And don't think the Matrix haven't done studies on this. The brain learns predictive behavior. Amazing how this predictive behavior can create the biggest of talents or be used for such a disgusting and degrading behavior. I want you to be the best you possibly can, and I'm here alongside you making videos every week, so you're not alone. I am actively thinking about people out there, and I want you to become something valuable to society. Your so-called addictive behavior can feed the elites of the pornography industry, or it can be overcome to help humanity. If you've been struggling for years, then let this be a turning point to help people out there, to make meaning of all the time you lost. Don't focus on your past. Look at your future. Make the future great in order to make the past look like it was worth it. Just like popping your fingers, you know intuitively it's bad for you. So is porn. Like you don't actually think that porn industry fakes 99% of things, you don't realize they are on multiple drugs like Viagra to create that fake video for you, and you're here jerking off to it. You don't need to wait for a research article to prove this. Everyone's got an addiction pathway. We all have dopamine.
We all get addicted to things in our lives, so get over it and fix it. This is the disease plaguing this young nation. They aren't observant like our ancestors. Inventions, algebra, and the pyramids required human beings to be observant. So why can't you just go with a better alternative so you don't fuck your life over it instead of waiting for evidence? Do you wait for evidence that McDonald's food is bad for you before you eat it? You hunch intuitively that it's bad by its price and what's in it. Or do you wait for evidence your life is fucked before you fix it? What evidence would fulfill that? People who say PMO is not bad for you if you don't overdo it, just don't do it themselves. I mean, do the same people who say moderation is good even mention how many times for each specific person and body type? When they do it? How often and how long? What the hell is this doing for your attention span, let alone your little penis scrolling through all that imagery? That control of your body you have given off to porn sites needs to be taken back. You know you feel edging off because of outside forces. Now it's time you control your thoughts, your actions, your life, your destiny. And don't make things look so darn difficult. You've made it look so difficult because of all the research. Just go out and test and get results. See what works for you. You don't need to use people's leftovers in a video to satisfy yourself. Go out and see the world. Do you really think women enjoy having sex on camera? It's no way in their behavior. But they do it for many reasons, and deep down, just like when they initially feared doing the act, yet hid the uncomfortableness under the idea it's empowering women, or whatever, they have taught themselves to habitually lie about it. It's all fake. They enhance what they're doing with sounds. You don't see the scenes where they cut and start again. What they're doing to themselves is unnatural, and you're not helping them either. You're not being the masculine man to look after women. There's women brainwashing themselves. They live quiet lives of desperation. And look at what you're doing to help them. And to look at porn disgustingly is to become super masculine. Every day, do tremendously strong tasks that a masculine man would do. Do anything you can to take yourself out of this behavior. Go and give yourself an experience of closeness to death if need be. Go and see a dead body. See if that will change you. You must realize that this desire was made to procreate and it's been used for pleasure. How weird we humans are. How illogical we are. We need to run our lives more logically. I don't want you to just get over porn. I want to move you towards a more fulfilling life. One thing I will never get to fathoms with is why do they even make pornography? What purpose does it serve if it doesn't become entertaining anymore? And as a last remark, do not forget, you don't just switch the behavior for something new. You must look at porn in a disgusting behavior, in a negative way, and then exchange your fapping for another behavior, however way you want to do it.